Chapter 1150. The bronze sword was just a regular weapon, after all. Perhaps the craftsmanship was not bad, but in the end, it could not be invincible, nor could it be indestructible. Chen Zhao put away the broken sword. He'd used the bronze sword time and time again to defeat strong enemies. He'd almost forgotten. It was actually just a regular sword. The dark serum turned into the shape of a huge bronze sword, but the blade was black and red intertwined. The dark serum wasn't pure anymore. Ever since it absorbed the magma, it had been in this black and red state. It wasn't a simple mixture. It was more like a chemical reaction between the dark serum and the magma, making the two become one. But the dark serum had become even more powerful. The dark serum now couldn't be called dark serum anymore. Perhaps it should be called dark lava. The dark lava transformed into a giant sword and swept out with unparalleled might. Dozens of hellfires were cut in half at the waist. Another slash and dozens more hellfires were killed. With just 2 slashes, the hellfires had already killed over 100. But Chen Zhao found it strange that he didn't receive a notification that he'd passed. The hellfires didn't retreat because of this. In the past, as long as you killed more than 100 monsters, the monsters would retreat. But the hellfires were still attacking Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao frowned and looked around. The dark lava was powerful, but it also consumed a lot of mana. He'd killed over 100 hellfires with 2 slashes, but he'd also used up half of his mana. Ever since he'd reached ultimate transformation, his mana had been very durable. In the past, he'd needed 10 points of mana to attack, but now he could do the same with just 2 points. Chen Zhao thought about it. If he used the zither to control the stone swords, the effect probably wouldn't be good either. If he used the bronze sword to attack, it would shatter. The stone swords were too fragile. If he used it to attack enemies with flesh, it would be good. But if he used it to attack enemies with extremely hot hellfires that were also made of stone, the 12 stone swords would probably be destroyed too. So, using the dark lava to attack was clearly the best. But while the dark lava was powerful, it also consumed more mana. Plus, he didn't know how many hellfires he had to kill to pass the 7th level. He could also use a clone, but it wouldn't be good here either. After all, the strength of the doppelganger was weaker than the main body. If the main body could be scalded, the doppelganger would probably suffer even more serious burns. Perhaps he could try that move. Chen Zhao started to gather the dark lava. It wrapped around him and even seeped into his body. This was the effect of the King of Wrath's bloodline. The dark origin fluid could fuse with an abyss devil with the King of Wrath's bloodline and greatly improve their bodily functions. Chen Zhao's body turned into a strange black and red state. Some parts of his body could also change at will. Chen Zhao's arms turned into 2 blades. He moved and instantly appeared on Hellfire's shoulder. With a gentle wave, Hellfire's rock head rolled off. Chen Zhao adjusted his body so that he could get used to the feeling better. The feeling of the dark magma fusing with his body was very strange. He could clearly feel the changes in his body. However, this change did not mean that he had reached perfection. Instead, his body and nervous reactions had undergone great changes. For example, the increase in speed made it harder to control the body. If the speed of the body was faster than the reflexes, it was easy to lose control. For example, if the power was greater than the control, one move might cause the body to lose control. Chen Zhao needed to readjust and find the feeling that suited him best. The dark magma wriggled on Chen Zhao's body again, making his limbs more symmetrical. Hellfire's individual strength was the type that was neither strong nor weak. Their individual strength was stronger than other giant monsters of the same type. For example, the twisted monster on the 2nd floor was far stronger than the twisted monster in both strength and speed. However, it was not so strong that Chen Zhao needed to go all out. Therefore, many of the battle tactics and methods that Chen Zhao was used to were not effective on Hellfires. This also forced Chen Zhao to abandon his old habits and find new ways to fight. After making some adjustments, Chen Zhao jumped onto another Hellfire. His arm turned into a 2-meter-long blade. With another slash, the Hellfire's head was smashed. Chen Zhao shook his head. It was still not the perfect form. He was going to cut open the Hellfire's head, but it was smashed instead. The result was the same, but the process was different. Smashing it would definitely use up more stamina and magic power. He had to speed up and make the blade made by the dark magma sharper. Chen Zhao kept fighting and trying in the Hellfire. In the meantime, Chen Zhao was also attacked and injured. Chen Zhao had already killed more than 200 Hellfires. It seemed that the 7th level was much more difficult than the previous 6. Chen Zhao finally found his best form. All his body movements became extremely smooth. He felt like it was his own body. Every time he killed a Hellfire, Chen Zhao would count in his heart. 793, 794, 853. 944. 999. 1000. Passed the 7th level. Score, D-. Save progress and leave, or enter the next floor. A-D-, a very low score. Chen Zhao was already very tired. The 7th level was already so difficult. The 8th would definitely be even more difficult. So, there was no need to continue. Chen Zhao left the Tower of Trials and entered the power room to replenish his magic power. After coming out of the power room, Chen Zhao was full of energy again. The power room was like a charger for Chen Zhao's magic power. In the headquarters of the association, Chen Zhao had limitless magic power. As long as he stayed in the power room for a few minutes, he could easily fill up his magic power. Of course, the power room wasn't suitable for wartime. If it was a battle, the enemy wouldn't let Chen Zhao rest in the power room for a few minutes. Suddenly, Chen Zhao had a whimsical idea. If he installed an electric discharge device around the entire association, he could discharge electricity when needed. When needed, he would discharge electricity. His Eye of the Thunder would directly attract the electric current and not harm his subordinates. That way, he would almost be undefeatable in the association. But if he wanted to install such a device, he probably wouldn't even be able to afford $10 million. Whatever. It was only the beginning of the year, but he'd already used up a few $1,000,000. Chapter 1151. Evely's training had already ended. 3 days later, it was time for the sports meet, which was held at the San Diego campus for a week. Chen Zhao was reluctant, but since he'd already promised right, he could only go as the leader. Fei Lai, let's go to San Diego together. Chen Zhao really didn't want to be away from home for a week and not see Fei Lai and Zhilin. So, he wanted to go with Fei Lai and Zhilin. Okay, I'll go. Chen Zhao had told Fei Lai many times already. Fei Lai really didn't understand why Chen Zhao would accept the job if he didn't want to go. Chen Zhao couldn't help it. Right just liked to take advantage of her seniority. Right didn't speak often, but when she did, it was usually an opportunity. Chen Zhao couldn't reject her. She'd also stayed in China for more than a decade. She knew Sun Tzu's art of war too well. She knew how to play hard to get. Chen Zhao really couldn't beat her. I'm going to San Diego tomorrow, Chen Zhao said. You go on the 27th, Chen Zhao had to go earlier because he was the leader. He couldn't go on the day of the competition. Chen Zhao had to arrange accommodations for the participating students and understand the competition process. The students were all adults, but they were still students of the school. The school still had to be responsible for them. For example, he had to manage and implement the rules and regulations during the competition. The sports day wasn't a professional sports day, but it received a lot of attention. This was because every school more or less had a few star students. For example, UCLA's Evely and Tiger. Evely didn't need to be mentioned. She was a world-class athlete. Speaking of American athletes, Evely couldn't be avoided. She was the holder of many world records and the first swimming legend to break the men's world record. Tiger was the WBA gold belt winner last year. He also received a lot of attention. Tiger's journey in the WBA had been too outstanding. He didn't lose a single one of his 13 matches. 6 of them were KO'd in the first round. His average time was less than 15 minutes. One of the famous boxers had even been hit by Tiger's heavy punches and had to retire from the boxing world. Of course, there was another reason. Last year, an underground dealer had tried to manipulate Tiger's matches. Tiger's tough counterattack was also praised by many boxing enthusiasts. They thought that he was a sportsmanlike athlete who was not afraid of power. Evely and Tiger were both star athletes. Because of their participation in the competition, there were sponsors and TV stations broadcasting it live. The other schools had many star students too. There were even 1 or 2 student athletes who were as famous as Tiger. It had to be said that the United States sports training was nurtured from a young age, and it permeated into the hearts of every citizen. In this regard, the other countries probably couldn't catch up. However, there was no way to compare them. Take China for example, the number of stadiums was different. All the stadiums and basketball courts in the country had basically been occupied by square dancing. In addition to the participating students, there were also a few cheerleaders who were going to support them. These cheerleaders were basically the most popular girls in the school. There were also some students who went to cheer for their classmates. Chen Zhao had to manage all of this. The next day, Chen Zhao went to school. There were 10 buses parked in the school's parking lot. The coaches or PE teachers of each sport were managing the students. Chen Zhao couldn't manage more than 100 students by himself. Therefore, there were still some coaches helping him. For example, Robert. He was now Chen Zhao's confidant. The little tricks that the other coaches were up to were all passed on to Chen Zhao by Robert. The coaches hated Chen Zhao to death, but they hated Robert even more. They felt that Robert was a traitor. Are the students all here? More than 10 students already said that they'll go to San Diego by themselves. Among the students who didn't report, only the track and field club is missing 1 person. Because Los Angeles wasn't far from San Diego, some students didn't want to squeeze in the buses. They wanted to drive themselves. Chen Zhao didn't care about this. They just had to be there on the day of the competition. Chen Zhao looked at the time and said, 10 more minutes. The other students can get on the bus. 10 minutes later, the late student arrived. Okay, let's go. The 10 buses drove out of the school. Chen Zhao sat on the bus at the front, resting with his eyes closed. The students on the bus were very noisy. Chen Zhao couldn't be bothered with them. They were at the most active age. Plus, they played sports, so they were full of energy. San Diego was considered a relatively large city, but the most famous thing in this city was the gangs. San Diego's gangs were also world famous. In America, each state and city had different policies. Some cities were suitable for gangs, while others weren't. San Diego was a suitable city. There were 3 powers here. One was the old mafia in San Diego, the Jarovitz family. They were originally based in New York, but they were forced to move to San Diego by the New York government's policy. They were the more law-abiding type, and many of their businesses were between the underworld and the underworld. One of them was the Mexican gang. They were also the most ferocious gang. The last one was from Colombia. It was a gang that escaped from Pablo Escobar's era. They were also called the Colombian Gang. If you're interested, you can search for Pablo Escobar on Baidu. The Colombian gang had the weakest foundation, but they were no less ruthless than the Mexican gang. The Mexican gang and the Colombian gang also had the most intense conflicts. Their businesses overlapped greatly too. For example, drugs, gambling, firearms, and prostitutes. 10 years ago, there would be fights between the two gangs almost every day. In recent years, the government's policies had changed. They'd started to manage the gangs with high pressure, so they'd been much more restrained. Suddenly, Chen Zhao smelled something. He opened his eyes and stood up. Then he started walking back. Every time he walked past a seat, he would size it up with his eyes. When he reached the last seat, his gaze fell on a tall boy. "Come with me," Chen Zhao said. Chapter 1152. There's a problem, Chen Zhao asked. Do you want to come with me, or do I have to force you out? Teacher, if you can't tell me your goal, I'll report you, the tall guy said, annoyed. Sure, this is the principal's number, this is the police's, and this is a reporter I know. Call whichever you want, Chen Zhao said calmly. The tall guy's expression turned unnatural. Teacher, I was just joking, but I don't know what I did wrong. I told you to come with me. Don't you understand me? In the end, the tall guy stood up and followed Chen Zhao to sit at the very front. Take it out, Chen Zhao said, looking at the tall guy. The tall guy looked troubled. What? I don't want to say it again. If you continue to refuse, you're done for. Chen Zhao stared coldly at the tall guy. Teacher, you have to think it through. School, the police, you're already an adult. The tall guy's face was filled with pain. Teacher, this isn't mine. I'm helping someone deliver it to San Diego. Take it out, Chen Zhao yelled again. He didn't care who it belonged to. Something like this had appeared in his team. Moreover, it wasn't a small amount. Everyone knew how widespread drugs were in America. However, Chen Zhao didn't expect someone to transport drugs among the students. After all, this was a serious crime. If Chen Zhao had pointed it out just now, the tall guy's life would be completely ruined. The school would definitely expel him. More importantly, he'd face a criminal trial. Every year, the police would catch hundreds of thousands of drug traffickers. More than a third of them were students of all ages. Some people knew that it was for temporary benefits. Some people were completely kept in the dark. Chen Zhao didn't notice it when he was driving. However, the car was sealed, so Chen Zhao quickly smelled it. Compared to other drug traffickers, students were undoubtedly the safest and safest. Chen Zhao reached out and was about to take something out, but the tall guy immediately resisted. Chen Zhao pressed the tall student down on his seat. If you continue to resist, the school will know about you. Teacher. I can't give it to you. If I give it to you, I'm dead. If that's the case, then go and explain to the police. Chen Zhao hated drugs deeply. This originated from his time as a doctor in China. Chen Zhao had once saved a woman. Her husband had forced his wife to sell her child and jump down from the 10th floor because he was collecting money for drugs. In Chen Zhao's opinion, it was unforgivable for anyone to touch drugs other than for medical purposes. Chen Zhao hated drugs. Moreover, if the car was inspected by the police and the student was found to be hiding or transporting drugs, Chen Zhao would also be held responsible. Chen Zhao threatened the student with his phone. The student finally gave up resisting. His body was trembling slightly. He sat on the seat and buried his head between his legs. Chen Zhao took out a bag of drugs from the student. Chen Zhao smelled it and knew what it was. It was die, also known as ecstasy. Most of these things would flow into nightclubs, bars, nightclubs, private parties, or even the hands of students. There was even a survey that showed that 90% of high school students knew where to buy this thing. The bag weighed about 2 kilograms and contained 2,000 granules. It's worth more than $100,000. He estimated that he would be able to earn $1,000 in transportation fees for a single trip across cities. Chen Zhao crushed all the granules into powder and poured it out the window. That's the end of the matter. Do you understand? Go back to your seat. After a 3 to 4 hour drive, the bus all arrived at Buffy Hotel in San Diego. Chen Zhao had to check in every student. Thankfully, he'd already made an appointment, so the process was rather easy. Each room was for 2 people. Chen Zhao got a suite for himself. Knock, knock. Chen Zhao's door rang. The door's open. Come in. Evelyn walked in and looked at Chen Zhao's luxurious suite. Chen, you really know how to enjoy life. I don't want to suffer, Chen Zhao said calmly. At least it's within my abilities. Do you want something to drink? No, how about going out and playing? I grew up in San Diego. I'm very familiar with the place. No. Chen Zhao thought of the first time he'd met Evelyn. It was on the train from San Diego to Los Angeles. That was also when he'd met Gaia. Of course, it wasn't a happy time. Today's free time. You can walk around. Whatever. It'll be boring if you don't go. How about we go for dinner? Okay, let's go. Just then, Robert called. Mr. Chin, can you come down for a while? A few people came to the hotel and want to take our students away. Okay, I'm coming. After hanging up, Chen Zhao said helplessly, looks like we'll have to postpone dinner. Chen Zhao hurried to the floor where the students lived. He saw a few PE teachers and coaches standing at the door. Before them were a few gangsters who didn't look like good people. Robert, what's happening? They want to take our students away. Chen Zhao glanced at the room. It was the tall students. Guys, why are you looking for my students? Sir, we're friends with Pierre. We're here to play with him. There's a party tonight. You don't mind, right? No, I don't mind, Chen Zhao said immediately. I'm the leader of all the students. I'm in charge of where they go. Pierre is grounded because he made a mistake. He's not allowed to leave the team. Hey, Asian monkey, do you know who we are? Bang! The blabbermouth gangster's head was pressed against the wall. There was even a mark on the wall. Oh, who are you? Tell me. But by then, the gangster had already fainted. Seeing Chen Zhao attack, the other gangsters immediately charged at him. Chen Zhao punched them one by one. Every gangster's head was broken and bleeding. Robert, call the police and complain to the hotel. Why did they let these unknown people in? I hope the hotel can give us an explanation. Otherwise, our school will sue the hotel. The PE teachers, including Robert, were all shocked by Chen Zhao's ruthless methods. Chapter 1153. They'd long heard that Chen Zhao could fight. However, the teachers in the school didn't have a clear understanding of what Chen Zhao meant by fighting. Now, they probably understood. With so many gangsters, Chen Zhao felt like he was dealing with a few bugs. Okay, go back. Chen Zhao waved his hand. San Diego wasn't really a dangerous city. The gangs here usually focused on their own businesses and wouldn't attack ordinary people. Because of the government's high-pressure policies, the gangs were much more restrained. However, if someone provoked them, they'd take revenge like mad dogs. Chen Zhao didn't take it to heart. After all, he'd killed many gangs before. For example, last time in Mountain Town, he'd realized that the gang in town seemed to have bad intentions towards him. The next day, all the members of the gang had disappeared from the face of the earth. Of course, the gangs in Mountain Town were actually a bunch of small, unorthodox gangs. They were completely different from the local gangs in San Diego. Pierre spent the entire night in fear. Late at night, he received a phone call. A cold voice came from the other end. Pierre, do you think that the school can protect you? And your family? Pierre was scared out of his wits. What he feared the most was that this would happen. From the moment he'd become a drug carrier, there was no turning back. Boss Bob, I didn't plan to betray you. The things were discovered by the school's teacher. He threw them all away, Pierre tried to explain. I don't care where they are. Get out of the hotel right now and we'll settle this. Pierre's face was filled with bitterness and fear. Boss Bob. I'll think of a way to pay you back. Please let me go. If you don't get out of the hotel in 10 minutes, you'll find your house on fire tomorrow. Oh. I remember that your sister is 17 this year, right? Ha, I'll come out. I'll come out. Pierre yelled in terror. He knew very well that these vicious gangs could do anything. They were capable of anything. The moment Pierre walked out of the hotel, he was thrown into a car with a black cloth draped over him. When the black cloth was removed, Pierre was thrown out of the car. Pierre found himself in a port. There were containers all around him. Pierre soon knew where he was. This was the legendary port of San Diego. A hidden port. Although Pierre wasn't a gangster, he had heard of the Port of Sin in Santiago. It is said that every year more than 50,000 women and millions of illegal organs are packed into containers and shipped around the world. Other than that, a large number of firearms and drugs entered the United States through this port. However, this port had evaded the police and the spy satellites. There was a large ship docked at the port, and the container handlers were lifting the containers down. The entire harbor was bustling with activity. Then Pierre beheld Bob's bloated and hideous face, and his menacing underlings. Hi, Pierre. Boss Bob. You're really brave. The people I sent are all in the hospital now. That wasn't done by me. It was done by a teacher from our school. I heard it's an Asian, right? Yes, call him. I want to see him, Bob said. I don't have his number. Pierre wanted to cry, but no tears came out. He was so scared that he almost wet his pants. Ring, ring. At night, Chen Zhao was woken up by a phone call. Closing his eyes, Chen Zhao fumbled for the phone. He really should have muted it. Hello, who's this? Mr. Chen, it's me, Robert. Pierre's roommate just came to find me. He said that Pierre received a call and left in a hurry. It's been an hour and he's not back yet. He can't get through to him either. Pierre. Which one? The one who was harassed by the gangsters today. Oh, got it. Chen Zhao sat up, looking like he had just woken up. How fucking unlucky. He had thought that he could have a nice vacation in Santiago. He didn't expect to run into something like this again. As soon as Chen Zhao hung up, another call from an unknown number came in. Hey, you're a teacher from UCLA, right? That's me. Who are you? People here call me Bob. Of course, you can also call me Crocodile. Sir, do we know each other? Chen Zhao interrupted Bob. It wasn't easy to find your number, Bob said to himself. I had to go through many layers of connections to find your number. Can I get to the point? Chen Zhao said impatiently. I want to meet you. I don't like meeting strangers in the middle of the night, Chen Zhao said calmly. You know, I didn't just find your number. I also found your home address. Oh, I heard that you have a pregnant girlfriend and a cute daughter, right? Ha. Chen Zhao scratched his head. Tell me, what do you want? I said I want to meet you. Where? Come out of the hotel. I have a car to pick you up. Okay, I'm starting to look forward to our meeting. Chen Zhao took off his pajamas and changed into a suit. At the same time, he picked up his phone and called Klaus. Klaus, are you at the headquarters right now? Yes, President. What's up? Go dig up the things I buried by the lake a while ago and then use a helicopter to transport them to Santiago as fast as possible. Also, track my phone's location. Oh, I got it. Chen Zhao walked out of the room and went downstairs. In the hotel lobby, he saw Robert standing there, scared out of his wits. Mr. Chen, where are you going? Chen Zhao didn't even look back. He walked out directly. It's none of your business. Go back to sleep. But Pierre's missing. He's from the basketball club. Mr. Chen, should we call the police? No, I'll bring him back now, Chen Zhao said calmly. Go to sleep now. Mr. Chen, how can I sleep now? I don't think you'll like where I'm going. Why? Just then, a few people rushed out from both sides. They covered Chen Zhao and Robert with black cloth and dragged them into the car. Ah! What are you doing? Help! Help! Suddenly, Robert felt like a hard stick was stuffed into his mouth. Shut up. If you speak again, I'll shoot you. Chapter 1154. Robert's mouth was stuffed with a gun the entire time. He was so scared that he didn't even dare to move. The car had been driving for more than half an hour, but they still hadn't arrived. It seemed that their destination was very far away. But to Chen Zhao, it didn't matter if he wore a hood or not. Fuck, why aren't you reacting at all? Scream, scream. One of the kidnappers saw that Chen Zhao didn't react at all. He didn't know if there was something wrong with him, but he felt very disappointed, or perhaps insulted. Suddenly, Chen Zhao raised his hand and caught the gangster's fist in the dark. You can see. The gangster stared at Chen Zhao in shock. Chen Zhao was wearing a hood. How could he catch his attack? Was it a coincidence? I'm not in a good mood right now. Don't piss me off. Even though he was wearing a mask, Chen Zhao's tone made the gang members in the car feel chills down their spines. They didn't know why, but this guy was clearly the most dangerous. Fuck you, stop pretending. The gangster thought that Chen Zhao was pretending and wanted to attack him again. The gangster thought that Chen Zhao was pretending, so he wanted to attack him again. The gangster thought that Chen Zhao was pretending and wanted to attack him again. The next moment, the car was filled with the gangster's painful screams. Crack, finally, there was silence. Other than Robert, who didn't know what was going on, the other gangsters all saw what happened in the car. Even the driver saw how Chen Zhao had killed their comrade through the rearview mirror. Chen Zhao was wearing a hood, but he first crushed his comrade's wrist and then twisted his neck. So noisy, Chen Zhao said casually. All the gangsters pointed their guns at Chen Zhao. If you want to get off alive, you better put down your guns. After all, I still need to lead the way. I don't want to fight halfway. Hearing Chen Zhao's arrogant tone, the gangsters found it funny. You have a gun pointed at your head. You forgot to load it, Chen Zhao reminded. The gangster was stunned. He hurriedly loaded his gun and continued pointing at Qin Zhao's head. However, the atmosphere had changed. Forget it. Boss Bob will kill you anyway. We don't need to do anything. That's right. You'll taste Boss Bob's horror. Not only you, but your wife and daughter will as well. Hee hee. Remember that policeman last time? Boss Bob mailed his wife's underwear to him. It's none of my business, it's none of my business. It's none of my business. Robert held his head and kept screaming in fear. After another half an hour, the car finally arrived at the port. Both Qin Zhao and Robert were pushed out of the car. Their hoods were also removed. Qin Zhao admired the night view. The workers around him were busy, as if they didn't see Qin Zhao and Robert being held hostage. These so-called workers were, in fact, gang members. They put on their work uniforms. This port was actually a parking lot during the day. Other than the gang members, no one knew the exact location of this place. This was also why this place could avoid the police's line of sight. On top of that, the police had also been infiltrated. Many of the judicial departments in the United States were actually connected to the gangs and even had some transactions. There were dozens of people in front of them, and at the feet of the fat leader was a man covered in bruises. It was Pierre. Bob looked at Qin Zhao and Robert. Why is there one more person? Where's Twick? Boss Bob, this guy's with him. Twick was killed by this Asian. It's none of my business. It's none of my business. Robert yelled in horror. Bob ignored Robert and looked at Qin Zhao. Mr. Qin, we finally meet. Let me introduce myself again. My name is Bob. The people you hurt today are my men, and the goods you destroyed are also mine. If you can't give me a satisfactory answer, your organs will appear on the European continent. Your wife will also appear there, and your daughter will be dismembered. By the way, I heard that you also have a pet. I like to eat dogs. Qin Zhao suddenly grinned. His smile was a bit twisted, and the curve of his lips was a bit scary. His eyes widened as he stared at Bob. What kind of answer do you want from me? I heard that you're very rich. How about this? You compensate me 100 times the price of the goods. That way, I can consider letting your wife and daughter go. Bob played with the ring on his finger. Do you know how I earned my wealth? Qin Zhao asked. How did you earn it? I'd really like to know. It's simple. I just kill people and some other things. As long as they're in my way, I usually kill them. Qin Zhao's smile was full of savagery. Just like this. Qin Zhao casually grabbed a gang member beside him. In front of Bob and dozens of people, he tore off the man's arm, leg, and stomach. The man screamed and begged for help, but everyone was stunned by Qin Zhao's terrifying methods. Qin Zhao used his bloody palm to stroke his hair. There was only one thought in everyone's mind. Even Robert didn't expect the usually polite Qin Zhao to have such a bloody and cruel side. Everyone pointed their guns at Qin Zhao. Bob's eyes flickered when he looked at Qin Zhao. He saw Qin Zhao's eyes. He saw the brutality in the man's eyes. Bob had hired quite a number of killers to help him deal with some of the dirty work. The killers' eyes were very similar to Qin Zhao's. But none of them would be as crazy and unscrupulous as Qin Zhao. Bob felt that he wasn't facing a human, but a beast. A crazy beast. Seeing that dozens of guns were pointed at him, Robert was so scared that he peed his pants. He really peed his pants. It's over, it's over. Robert's face paled in fear. I hate being threatened, especially when it involves my family. The bones in Qin Zhao's body made crackling sounds. But you can't do anything now. Bob felt that Qin Zhao might be the boss of some force. But he had no way out now. What he needed to consider now wasn't whether the force behind Qin Zhao would take revenge. Instead, he needed to kill Qin Zhao. Qin Zhao glanced at the time on his watch. It's about time. Whoosh, 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 the sound of a helicopter came from the night sky. Just then, everyone saw an armed helicopter appear above the port. However, there was a machine hanging below the helicopter. Chapter 1155. Enemy Attack. Enemy Attack. Before the gangsters could react, the military helicopter and the Lightning team members who were already in position formed an arc-shaped encirclement. Of course, it wasn't accurate to call it an encirclement. After all, including the military helicopter, there were only 6 of them. There were at least 100 of Bob's men and the workers. However, the Lightning team had brought powerful firepower this time. The 2 gun barrels on the landing gear of the military helicopter suddenly spat out tongues of fire. The other 5 Lightning team members in different corners also attacked at the same time. Whoosh, 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 Robert and Pierre both hugged their heads and lay on the ground. The people around them were riddled with holes and fell to the ground one after another. Counterattack! 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 Bob shouted with all his might, but he also hugged his head and lay on the ground. Qin Zhao was the only one left standing. It wasn't that the gangsters didn't want to fight back, but they were armed with pistols. They were facing the military helicopter and automatic weapons. The military helicopter used 12mm armor-piercing bullets. They could even penetrate regular armored vehicles. If they hit a person, their body would be destroyed immediately. Klaus and the others were holding heavy machine guns, the kind that needed a rack to shoot. However, they were holding them in their hands. These weapons could fire more than 200 rounds per minute. Moreover, they had the high ground. In this situation, the gangsters couldn't fight back at all. Bob kept holding the pistol in his hand, but he didn't fire a single shot. He didn't even have the courage to look up. Qin Zhao's voice rang in his ears. Kill everyone in this port. Don't leave a single one alive. The military helicopter whistled and the gunshots grew further away. However, the screams were endless. Robert and Pierre were also terrified. Just like Bob, they hugged their heads and curled up on the ground in fear. The air was filled with the pungent smell of blood and the smoke that made people cry uncontrollably. This killing process lasted for about 10 minutes. Finally, Bob heard the second person's voice. President, they're all dead. There were flames in the distance. The Lightning team was setting the place on fire. They wanted to burn the entire port. Give me what I want, Qin Zhao said. The military helicopter landed slowly. Klaus and the others had flown at maximum speed to carry out Qin Zhao's orders. In an hour, they had traveled 400 kilometers. The meat grinder was still as good as new. The Lightning squad still had 10 minutes to dig it out from the ground and clean it while they were at it. Cass didn't know what Qin Zhao wanted to do, but he could hear Qin Zhao's tone. It was the prelude to a volcano eruption. Someone had angered him. Mr. Bob, aren't you going to look up and see where you belong? Qin Zhao asked. Bob raised his head and looked around. At this moment, his face was extremely pale. He realized that he was in big trouble. He was not the owner of this port, he was just the manager. This port was jointly owned by the 3 major forces of San Diego. But now, the port was completely destroyed. Do you know what you're doing? I know. Of course I know what I'm doing, Qin Zhao said with a smile. You're threatening my family. Qin Zhao looked at Bob and then at Klaus. Start this mincing machine. Rumble, the mincing machine emitted a deafening sound. Qin Zhao walked up. Bob tried to resist, but Chen Zhao kicked Bob's gun-wielding arm first. The kick broke it and the arm flew into Bob's mouth. Bob screamed in pain. His right arm was a bloody mess. Chen Zhao picked up Bob's foot and dragged him to the mincing machine. No. Let me go, let me go. I won't do it again. I apologize for my inappropriate words earlier. Sorry, I can't accept it. Whoosh! Chen Zhao stuffed Bob's foot into the entrance of the mincing machine. Blood sprayed out from the entrance. Bob's tenacious life force did not kill him immediately. He was still struggling. He finally realized that he had offended a demon. There was no pity or sympathy. He could only endure hell and despair, complaining with heart-wrenching screams. Even though Bob's legs were completely crushed, he was still alive, not dead immediately. But now, he no longer had the strength to scream. His stomach had sunk into the mincing machine. Just then, the mincing machine suddenly stopped. Chen Zhao turned off the switch and looked at Bob, who was still stuck in the mincing machine. That's perfect. Have a good night. Chen Zhao looked at Robert and Pierre. You can leave now. By the way, Pierre violated the school rules tonight. He came out to drink and got into a fight outside the school. Find him and give him a demerit. The two nodded. They did not dare to look at Bob's tragic state. This was an even crueler butcher than Bob. Early morning, Bolton, go to the outskirts 30 kilometers away immediately. What happened? Bolton was sleeping with his wife in his arms. We found the legendary port of Sin. Bolton suddenly woke up from his bed. How did you find it? There was a gunfight last night. No, more accurately, it was a massacre. I'll go immediately. Send me the exact location. San Diego was very busy today. Almost all the police officers were heading toward the same location. When Bolton arrived at the port, he saw a few police officers surrounding a mincing machine. Hey, Dawes. Bolton, you're here. Is there a war here? Yes, but it's a one-sided war. Look at what this is, 12mm armor-piercing bullets. Do the gangs all use this kind of weapon in fights nowadays? At this moment, the two policemen behind dragged a person down from the machine. Ha! What? Bolton immediately vomited, while the other colleagues all had gloating expressions on their faces. Bob's intestines were all out. His lower body was empty. He died from the pain. The entire place had been burned down, but it was still relatively clean. Isn't that Bob? Who did he offend? Mexicans? Colombians? Mafia? According to the investigation, Bob is the manager of this port, which is owned by 3 forces. It can't be them. Other than these 3 forces, who else has this kind of ability? Who else has such cruel methods? That's what we need to investigate, Dawes said. They're a group of evil people. Chapter 1156. This. Dawes took out a staff card. This is. Bob took the card. Robert, UCLA basketball coach. We found them in this car. In the entire port, only this car and the meat grinder were not destroyed. We also found a relatively intact corpse in the car. His neck was broken. Any other clues? In front of the mincing machine, apart from Bob's blood and muscle tissue, we also found the blood and teeth of a second person. This person's body was not found at the scene. At present, this person's blood and muscle tissue have been sent to the laboratory for analysis and sample comparison. Just then, Dawes' phone rang. 2 minutes after Dawes took the phone, he said to Bolton, "The sample comparison results are out." He's a student from UCLA and also a member of the school's basketball team. His name is Pierre. He's in a hotel in San Diego right now. He's here to participate in the university games. What about Robert? He's also staying in this hotel. Leave these two to me. I'll investigate them. Bolton rushed to the hotel and asked the front desk which UCLA students were staying at. Sir, please wait a moment, the receptionist said. I'll call the UCLA team leader. Chen Zhao received the call and went to the front desk. Chen Zhao studied Bolton. Sir, how can I help you? I want to see UCLA basketball coach Robert and student Pierre, Bolton said. May I ask why they're here? They're related to a case. I need their help. Okay, please follow me. Chen Zhao called Robert. Robert, a police officer is looking for you. He says he needs your help. Come to the lobby with Pierre immediately. It was not long before Robert and Pierre arrived. Bolton glanced at Robert's staff card and handed it to him. Mr. Robert, this is yours, right? When Robert saw the card, his expression changed. He really didn't realize that he'd lost his card. Yes. This work pass was left in a van. I'd like to ask, Mr. Robert, where did you and Pierre go last night? Pierre went out to drink last night and messed with some hooligans. I went to bring him back, Robert said. Pierre was also given a demerit for this. You went to the port on the outskirts last night, right? Yes. Robert seemed a little nervous. Mr. Pierre, I'd like to know who beat you last night. I don't know their exact identities. Probably a local gang. Who were the people who drank with you? I was alone. I bought a bottle of wine and drank it on the street. Because I vomited at the feet of a group of people, they dragged me into a car. I don't know where exactly, but I was beaten up. Pierre's face was still bruised, so his words seemed to be credible. Bolton didn't think that Pierre or Robert were related to this case. From their personal information, they were all very ordinary. He did not have any criminal records, nor did he have any dealings with any gangs. Did anything special happen during this process? Is it a special process for me to be beaten? Pierre asked. Bolton stroked his beard. Mr. Robert, why is your work badge in that gang's car? I was told to pick up Pierre, and I was dragged into the car too, Robert said calmly. Robert said calmly, I think my work pass fell off during the tug. Both Robert and Pierre were terrified, and they were trying their best to control their emotions. They did not dare to expose themselves because Chen Zhao was watching from the side. If they had said another word, they might have ended up like Bob, dying without a whole corpse. This police officer didn't know that Chen Zhao was the real Demon King. He was the culprit. So the gang let you and Mr. Pierre go so easily after you arrived. What else? What should they do? They won't kill us, right? Bolton was stunned. Robert's words seemed to make some sense, but something was wrong. As for what was wrong, he couldn't tell. The only thing he was sure of was that the two of them were definitely not the culprits. All right. Thank you for your cooperation. If there's anything else I need, I'll need your help. Bolton stood up and left. After a few steps, he turned back. He saw Robert and Pierre looking at Chen Zhao with fear in their eyes. Bolton returned. Mr. Chen, can I ask you a few questions? No, I don't have time, Chen Zhao said, standing up. Daddy. At this moment, a childish voice came from behind Bolton. Turning around, Bolton saw a beautiful pregnant woman and a little girl walking toward them. Chen Zhao smiled immediately. He picked up Jerlin, who ran over happily. Baby, do you miss Dad? Excuse me. Chen Zhao glanced at Bolton. Carrying Jerlin, he went upstairs with Feilai. Bolton looked at Chen Zhao's back. He was a bit hesitant about what had just happened. However, he could not find anything suspicious about Qin Zhao. He could only ask for Qin Zhao's cooperation, but Qin Zhao also had the right to refuse unless he could show some evidence. Is Mr. Qin your school's leader? He's a professor, Robert said. He's different from me. Looking at Qin Zhao's back, Bolton felt even more helpless. There is a great deal of risk in offending a man of high social standing. Being a university professor was undoubtedly the most respected profession. Thus, Bolton could only give up on pestering Qin Zhao. After Qin Zhao and Fei Lai entered the elevator, Fei Lai asked, "That person was a police officer, right? What did you do last night?" In Chinese terms, I got rid of evil for the people, upheld justice, and protected my students. Qin Zhao did not want to continue this topic, so he changed it decisively. Did you drive here today? Or by train? Train. To be honest, the train in America was not pleasant. The slow speed and having to stop at every station made the experience unpleasant. Comparatively speaking, the domestic railway system was much more complete. Of course, this was also because there were a lot of people in the country. There were fewer drivers, so there was a certain dependence on the railway. Of course, the railway system was more powerful. America also had high-speed rail, but the coverage was much lower. Chapter 1157. Robert and Pierre glanced at each other and heaved a long sigh of relief. They'd finally gotten rid of the police officer. They didn't want to be enemies with Qin Zhao. They'd seen Qin Zhao's subordinates kill more than 100 people with their own eyes. At the same time, there was Bob. To them, it was a shadow that they couldn't get rid of. And this incident had alarmed far more than just the police. At the moment, the atmosphere in a club in San Diego was especially heavy. The club belonged to the Jerovitz family, but today, two groups of uninvited guests had arrived. The entire club was in a tense atmosphere. The Colombian and Mexican gangs came to the club together. Barsaco, Gazeville, what's the meaning of this? Mollisman looked at the two in front. The port that our three parties jointly run has been destroyed. Mr. Mollisman, aren't you going to explain? Barsaco stared at Mollisman. He wanted to find some clues from Mollisman's expression. Mollisman frowned. You think I did it? Who else could it be other than you? Although the port was jointly owned by the three parties, the Jerovitz family had always wanted to wash their hands clean. Therefore, many businesses had been sold or transferred. Therefore, the share of the port's profits was very small. Most of the time, the Mexican and Colombian gangs were happy to see this. But now that something had happened to the port, the first person they thought of was the Jerovitz family. I didn't do it. You can leave, Mollisman said. Then he planned to chase the two away. You think it's not me? Show me the evidence, Barsaco said relentlessly. Raising an eyebrow, Mollisman turned to look at Barsaco. My words are the evidence. Our family never hides our true intentions. If we did it, we won't lie. Barsaco and Gazeville were angry at Mollisman's perfunctory attitude, but they just wanted to know the truth now. After all, the destroyed port was too great a loss for them. Large amounts of goods were piled up in their hands and couldn't be transported out. Their goods on the sea couldn't be sent in either. The daily losses made them cry. Of course, Mollisman was the most suspicious, but it wasn't very likely. Although Mollisman had the least interest in the port, it did not mean that they had no interest at all. I believe you, Mr. Morris-man, said Gazeville. Barasco's face was filled with displeasure. What Gazeville said meant that he was being isolated. But don't you want to find the real murderer? No. Mollisman said indifferently, of course, if you find the real culprit, you can inform me. I also want to see who did it. Mollisman was very curious as to what kind of person could have such powerful strength. From the information he had received, the other party did not have many people, but their firepower was terrifying. They even found traces of an armed helicopter. This made Mollisman suspect that the military was involved. Although there were many private planes in the United States, it was almost impossible for anyone other than the military to own an armed helicopter. This was also the reason why Mollisman did not want to delve into it. In the United States, he could argue with everything. He could go against the government, but he couldn't go against the military. There were people from their family in the government, but the military did not allow the mafia to interfere. Therefore, Mollisman had always pursued the principle of keeping a low profile. Especially when it came to people with sensitive identities. From all the traces at the scene, the other party had a powerful background. Coward, Barasco said unhappily. Mollisman sneered inwardly. He was different from these barbarians. If it was profitable, the mafia's methods would not be any weaker than theirs. But if it was meaningless violence, it would only attract more attention from their enemies. This was also why members of the Jerovitz family could walk openly on the streets. As for the two gangs, they could only survive in the dark corners. Since Mr. Mollisman doesn't care about this attack, I presume you don't care about the interests of the port. How about this? This time, Barasco and I will investigate, but Mr. Mollisman will not be involved in the reconstruction of the port, Gazeville said. Barasco's eyes lit up. This was a good excuse to share the interests of the port with Gazeville. Okay. Mollisman smiled. These two idiots thought of things too simply. The port had been able to exist for so many years because of the joint maintenance of the three parties. Without anyone, the port could not continue to operate. They were actually naive enough to doubt that they could eliminate him with this move. It was really wishful thinking. Soon, they would come to him for help. Barasco and Gazeville left the clubhouse unhappily. Mollisman snapped his fingers, and a neatly dressed butler with slick back hair came to Mollisman. Do you have any clues here? Last night, San Diego's local air traffic control received an order. There was an armed helicopter flying over downtown San Diego at 2:25 in the morning, the butler said. Mollisman thought to himself that it was indeed not simple. He could actually send an order to the air traffic control. Which party sent the order? California Anti-Terrorism Department. Mollisman gasped. The functions of the Anti-Terrorism Department and the police were similar, but the authority of action was completely different. Since 9/2, the anti-terrorism departments in the United States had implemented a high control policy, which was the so-called suspicion was dangerous policy. As long as anyone or any force was suspected of being related to terrorist acts, they would be under absolute control, and any extraordinary means of violence could be used. Is there any more information? The phone device Bob used was a communications company under his family's name. From Bob's phone records in the last 3 hours, he made a total of 2 calls. One was a UCLA student named Pierre, and the other was a university professor, a Chinese. What's so special about these 2 calls? There's nothing special about Pierre, but the university professor has another identity, an illegal doctor. He's been in America for more than a year, but he used self-defense as an excuse and killed no less than 30 people. He's an out-and-out butcher. Oh. Mollisman's interest was piqued. It was not a skill to kill many people. Some of the gunmen and their family had killed dozens of people. Chapter 1158. Is there any more information about this person? This person has earned $100 million in a year, the butler said. Up until now, he seems to have tax-free privileges. Mollisman's eyes glinted. How scary was the IRS? The IRS dared to collect taxes from drug lords. There was once a famous drug lord who was investigated by the IRS for tax evasion and then arrested by the FBI. But tax-free privileges. How much power did one have to have? Of course, the tax-free privilege was hidden. It couldn't be blatantly said, "I don't have to pay taxes." People like Mollisman wouldn't be able to get it in their entire lives. No matter how developed their families were, they wouldn't be able to get this privilege. This matter ends here. Don't pursue it any further. There was only one person floating out of the water now. But it had already involved the anti-terrorism department. This was a taboo area for people of their status. If the other party realized that they were investigating, it might cause a misunderstanding. The final result would be hard to say. In the 1970s, the Mafia had tried to control the FBI. In the end, the 5 families all fled New York City. This was a taboo that they couldn't touch. Chen Zhao carried Jerlin with one hand and held Fei Lai's hand with the other. But the moment they left the hotel, Chen Zhao felt that someone was watching them. Chen Zhao's brows furrowed slightly, but he soon understood. He didn't want to act strangely in front of Fei Lai. So, he pretended that nothing had happened and sat in their rented car to go shopping. The people who were spying on them were still following them. A cold glint flashed across Chen Zhao's eyes. So annoying. With Fei Lai beside him, Chen Zhao couldn't do anything on the street. "Chen, what are you doing? You look so restless. What are you thinking about?" "Nothing. I just feel that San Diego is a bit unfamiliar. I'm trying to think of a fun place. Let's go to the beach. San Diego's Grand Canyon coast is a famous surfing mecca. Don't think about surfing like this." Chen Zhao looked at Fei Lai's stomach. "I don't care. After our new home is built, I can surf whenever I want." Fei Lai was looking forward to the completion of her new home. Generally, in order to become a surfing mecca, a few conditions must be met. First, the height and speed of the waves must be high. Second, there must be no dangerous creatures, such as sharks. Many coastlines had the height and speed of the waves, but there were too many sharks, making it impossible for surfers to go into the water. For example, their new home was the same. Back then, Amira had bought it to create a golden beach. But because of the sharks, the plan was ruined. In the United States, it was not allowed to reduce the number of sharks by killing them. Otherwise, the people from the Animal Protection Organization would come looking for them. "I don't want to go into the water. I just want to take a look." Fei Lai had been away from her post for too long and was a bit bored. All right. 2 adults and 1 child arrived at the Grand Canyon Beach. The reason why it was called the Grand Canyon Beach was because there was an ocean canyon 100 meters away from the coastline. It was precisely because of this underwater canyon that the current changed and formed huge waves. See, roar. Little Jerlin screamed. Chen Zhao face-bombed. Where did Jerlin learn to speak in such a weird way? It must be those little bastards at home. When he went back, he would interrogate them one by one and skin them alive. Little Jerlin immediately wanted to take off her clothes. When she was at home, she could go into the water whenever she wanted. Chen Zhao immediately stopped her. What a joke. Where was this? It wasn't his home. Even if she was a child, people might call the police if she was exposed here. Also, there were many perverts in the United States. Dad, I want to go, I want to go. Little Jerlin squirmed in Chen Zhao's arms. Forget it. I'll go buy a small swimsuit. Fei Lai, can you let it go? It wasn't that Fei Lai couldn't go into the water, but that she couldn't wear a swimsuit. It was tight-fitting and not suitable for pregnant women. The swimsuit at home was specially designed for Fei Lai by Zola's company, but they didn't bring it. I won't go in, Fei Lai said. The water outside isn't clean. Fei Lai didn't go in, so Chen Zhao didn't go either. He just sat with Fei Lai on the beach. After changing into her swimsuit, little Jerlin played on the beach. However, Chen Zhao's gaze didn't leave Jerlin. The wave from here to the shore was more than 80 centimeters, so Chen Zhao was worried that it would wash over Jerlin. Just then, a sudden voice rang out. Barbarians! Chen Zhao turned around and saw a few young people, both men and women. Everyone was holding a surfboard. They all looked at Chen Zhao. However, Chen Zhao didn't recognize them at all. Who are you? Did you forget? Barbarians. I don't know. Hearing that Chen Zhao had completely forgotten about them, the young people were even more furious. We're from UCSF's swim team. Oh, I remember. Chen Zhao slapped his head. It's you guys. Are your arms and legs healed? How dare you appear before me? Thinking of Chen Zhao's terrifying combat ability, the students became timid again. However, one of them mustered up his courage and said, Do you dare to hit us here? Idiot! Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. He didn't even want to bother with these kids. The past was the past. Chen Zhao didn't want to cause trouble for them anymore. However, if they insisted on messing with Chen Zhao, he didn't mind teaching them a lesson. Asian, do you dare to compete with us in surfing? Boring. Chen Zhao pouted. These kids couldn't pique Chen Zhao's interest at all. Coward. Yeah, you only know how to bully people. Coward. Even the accompanying girls started mocking Chen Zhao. Darling, go. Since they want to embarrass themselves, let them know that you won't lose to them in any aspect. Chen Zhao didn't mind, but Fei Lai did. She was mocking her man right in front of her. If it were in the past, Fei Lai would do it herself. However, she had a big belly now and couldn't do it. There were formal competitions in surfing and the scoring method was more orthodox. After the peak of the wave, the longer one maintained it and the more difficult moves one could make, the higher the score. Chapter 1159. Fine, Chen Zhao said. Since we're going to compete, we'll use the point system. Also, choose someone to compete with me. Everyone looked at each other. In the end, the leader ran out. I'll compete with you, the leader said. Villiers, don't embarrass UCSF. Don't worry. You already lost last year. Chen Zhao didn't give them any face. It doesn't matter. You've already lost your face last year. Chen Zhao didn't want to give them any face. Because of the boxing club incident, all the UCSF students felt embarrassed. It also affected their mentality. Because of the boxing club incident, all of the UCSF students felt humiliated, and it affected their own psychology as well. They didn't think that fighting was embarrassing. In fact, even UCLA thought so. They didn't think it was embarrassing to fight. In fact, even UCLA thought so. The key was that he took the initiative to pick a fight with someone, but in the end, he lost. Most of the students had experienced last year's incident. When they heard Chen Zhao's words, they were all furious. Usually, they'd fight impulsively after being insulted like that. Normally, they'd definitely fight impulsively after being insulted like that. But before Chen Zhao, they really didn't have the courage. Fight Chen Zhao. They probably wouldn't die fast enough. The waves are perfect right now. Don't waste time. Come, Chen Zhao urged. Oh, lend me a surfboard. Chen Zhao didn't care if they were willing or not. He snatched a surfboard. 3, 2, 1, start. Holding the boards, Chen Zhao and Villiers charged into the water at the same time. First, they paddled and waited for the waves to come. The highest waves on the Grand Canyon beach could go over 18 meters. Usually, it was a good surfing beach if it could go over 8 meters. Normal people wouldn't dare to surf there. If they encountered a huge wave over 18 meters, they'd get hurt. Villiers was faster than Chen Zhao. He looked back at Chen Zhao mockingly. Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. This was a surfing competition, not a paddling competition. What's the point of being fast? By then, the two had already paddled to the waves. Villiers stood on the board first. Chen Zhao also stood on the surfboard. Then it was time to get on the waves. The two controlled the boards and slid up. Getting on the waves was already a score. Being able to get on the waves without falling was 5 points. It had to be said that Villiers' technique was quite good. He managed to get up and down twice in a row. Chen Zhao leaned back and stepped on the bottom of the skateboard with one foot. The front end was completely lifted up. He maintained a stable posture, neither up nor down in the middle of the wave wall. What move is that? That's climbing the wall, said a student who was familiar with surfing, but his face was quite heavy. This is a very difficult move. By then, the waves had already arrived. Both Chen Zhao and Villiers lowered their center of gravity. The two of them, one in front and one behind, were running away from the wall of waves. Logically speaking, Chen Zhao, who was at the back, was at a greater disadvantage. But Chen Zhao kept his composure. On the other hand, Villiers' body began to sway, and both of them were engulfed by the waves. As for Villiers, he lost his balance and fell heavily into the sea. Chen Zhao successfully passed through the wall of waves. He stood firmly on the skateboard and continued to row forward. Everyone's expressions were ugly. It was obvious that Villiers had lost. In terms of technique, it wasn't as difficult as Chen Zhao. In terms of stability, it wasn't as stable as Chen Zhao. The difference wasn't just a little bit. Chen Zhao returned to the shore first and tossed the skateboard to the UCSF students. You people from UCSF are so useless. How dare you challenge me with such little skill? Go back and drink milk for a few more years. Chen Zhao's words were quite unpleasant. But just then, a woman in a swimsuit walked over. Kid, are you insulting UCSF? You're from UCSF too. Then I'll admit it. Chen Zhao shrugged. I'll compete with you, the woman said. Are all UCSF people so sore losers? You win one and then another, just like last year's sports day. Chen Zhao's tone was rather arrogant. You can call them losers, but you can't call UCSF people that bad. This is the power of the winner, just like last year. Which school are you from? You're not a student, right? You should be a teacher or coach from another university. Do you think it's glorious to win against a bunch of students? Last year, they challenged me and I won, so it's glorious. Now, they're challenging me again and I won again. Do you think I should feel ashamed? The woman turned to the UCSF students. Which university is he from? The students didn't know this woman, but she must be a senior from their school. At least they were on the same side. He's a professor at UCLA. Professor? Isn't he a coach or PE teacher? He's the coach of the boxing club and the swimming team, Villiers said. So your best events are boxing and swimming, right? I'll find someone and you can compete with him. Not interested, Chen Zhao said disinterestedly. Are you scared? If I have to accept everyone's challenge, wouldn't I be too busy? $1 million. If you can beat this person, I won't pursue your inappropriate comments. If you lose, you have to publicly apologize. Chen, if this lady wants to give you money, why don't you accept? Fei Lai asked. I don't want to waste such a good time for $1 million. Miss, this man's boxing skills are very strong. He crippled Douglas with one punch. Hearing this, the woman's expression changed. Then she said, let's compete in swimming. Feilai snorted. This woman probably didn't know how to write the word death. How good was Chen Zhao's swimming? Even fish in the water couldn't swim faster than Chen Zhao. Darling, it's time to show you how good you are, Feilai said. You're comparing us. Of course not. I'm looking for someone. Fine, but you better hurry up. I don't want to waste time. Half an hour, the woman said. Okay, I'll give you half an hour. Oh, you better prepare $1 million too. Don't go back on your words. The woman jogged to the changing room and picked up her phone. Evely, come to the Grand Canyon beach immediately. Barisa, what do you want me to do? Don't worry about that. Hurry up. Don't forget that you still owe me. Does that mean I'll return the favor if I go? Chapter 1160. A while later, Evely arrived. Barisa dragged Evely to the beach anxiously. Barisa, what do you want? Help me win against someone. Is my world championship so worthless? Evely said, annoyed. If I lose, I'll lose over $100, Barisa said. Do you care about that? I'll lose face. Barisa didn't care about $1 million, but she cared more about her face. Do you know how much my appearance fee is for the Asian exhibition? No matter how much it is, you have to help me win against that person today, Barisa said, pulling Evely. You're not going to make me swim in the sea, right? Evely looked at Barisa, depressed. Barisa was her sister. The reason why Evely could be free from the restrictions of her family and focus on her own swimming was also because Barisa had given up her own business and taken over the family's business. Only then could Evely be free. However, this also led to Barisa using this matter to blackmail Evely. Evely's face was filled with helplessness. She could only follow Barisa to change into her swimsuit. In the distance, Evely saw 3 familiar figures. Wasn't that Chen Zhao, Feilai, and Zhilin? What a coincidence. Were they playing here too? Evely walked toward Feilai and Chen Zhao. Hi, Chen, Feilai, Evely greeted. Hi, Evely. What a coincidence. Chen Zhao turned around and saw Barisa standing beside Evely. Wait. You're the helper she found. Yes, Evely. Barisa wasn't surprised that Chen Zhao knew Evely at all. Since Chen Zhao was UCLA's swimming coach, there was no reason he wouldn't know Evely. Evely stared at Barisa with widened eyes. You want me to compete with Chen? Yes. Barisa nodded. You found a UCLA student to compete with me. No matter who wins or loses, it seems like our school will win. You said I can find helper. Since that's the case, I can find anyone. So now, she's not representing UCLA, but UCSF. Evely covered her head. She really didn't understand Barisa's thoughts. Of course, Barisa was not stupid. In fact, her thoughts were very clear. Evely was the world record holder. Moreover, he was the world record holder for men. She didn't believe Evely would lose to Chen Zhao. No matter how strong Chen Zhao was, he was just a coach. If he could really do well, he wouldn't be a coach anymore. Therefore, she firmly believed that Evely could win. I can't beat him. Barisa, just give me $1 million, Evely said. Evely, you can't do this. You're the world champion. How can you give up so easily? Barisa panicked. It's not about $1 million. It was a matter of face. She had been confident that Evely would win. Who would have thought that Evely would admit defeat? To her, Evely was purposely going easy on her. I'm telling the truth. I don't care. You have to compete. I didn't call you here to admit defeat. You can't admit defeat just because he's the coach of UCLA. I can't accept that. It wasn't like Evely hadn't fought Qin Zhao before. She'd trained in front of Qin Zhao's house for more than a week. Qin Zhao would swim in the water every day, but his monstrous speed made her feel despair every time. After so many times, Evely had completely given up hope. Competing with Qin Zhao was like torturing oneself. Evely didn't want to compete with Qin Zhao. The process was too painful. Do you know that all the members of our national team were defeated by him? Evely asked. I don't believe it. You only favor him because you know each other. You're my sister. Anyway, I won't accept this result. I refuse to pay the $1 million. Chen, I'll pay the $1 million for Barisa. Forget it. Qin Zhao shrugged. After all, he and Evely were old friends. He couldn't make things difficult for her sister for $1 million. Qin Zhao glanced at Barisa. Oh, why don't you find that foreign boxer? I'm happy to have a round of beach boxing. Don't be so arrogant. Last year's WBA gold belt was our company's product spokesperson. I'll make him. Evely covered her face. You mean Tiger, right? He's also Chen's student. What? Tiger's a UCLA student? Fuck, I'm canceling my collaboration with him. You people from UCSF are all weaklings. Qin Zhao was unforgiving now that he had the upper hand. Barisa gritted her teeth in anger. What are you so proud of? You didn't win honorably. If Evely didn't go easy on you, do you think you could have won? Evely's a UCLA student. Evely, transfer to UCSF now. Evely felt that both Qin Zhao and Barisa were so childish. Of course, Evely couldn't be more familiar with both Qin Zhao and Barisa. Both of them were the type of people who, once they got excited, would be competitive. It was just like when Amira found the entire national team. At first, Qin Zhao wasn't willing to compete. But when it came time to compete, Qin Zhao didn't admit defeat. In the end, he defeated the entire national team and was still mocking them. You pieces of trash. Think of something that can beat him. Barisa vented her anger on the students of the University of San Francisco. Weightlifting, Evely said. He doesn't look like he does weightlifting. Don't even think about it. Our sports club lost to him in all the events last year, Evely said. Barisa, it's impossible for you to beat him in sports. I don't believe that one person can be good at all sports. Barisa gritted her teeth and looked at Qin Zhao. Asian, do you dare to bet with me? I have 3 days to prepare. I need to find a competition that can beat you. Not interested, Qin Zhao said, rolling his eyes. He was in high spirits. Who would be interested in serving her in 3 days? 30 million. You don't dare to accept. Compete in what? Pets. Pets. A strange expression appeared on Evely's face. She knew what Qin Zhao kept in his house. Barisa's idea was simple. According to Evely, Qin Zhao was almost unbeatable in sports. Then, she would compete in something other than Qin Zhao. Chapter 1161. Dog fighting was illegal, and Bertha didn't like the idea of dogs fighting with other dogs. Of course, Qin Zhao didn't like it either. There's an event in San Diego, Barisa said. It's a pet competition. First, it can't be a dog or a cat. After that, they have to pass a safety test and an intelligence test. After that, they'll enter the main competition. We'll see whose pet can be the champion. No time. The sports competition was starting tomorrow. Qin Zhao had to be there to watch over the students. He didn't have time to participate in the competition. Chen, I'll compete with Ms. Barisa, Feilai said. Let me compete with her. She was bored. There weren't many places to play in San Diego. This competition was just what she wanted. Feilai was very confident in her pets. She didn't believe that there would be an animal smarter than her pets in the world. Barisa, you're going to lose, Evely said. Evely had interacted with Qin Zhao's pets many times. She was also familiar with them. Sometimes, she could ask her pets if she needed anything and they would help her. For example, food, drink, or a bath towel. 1 in 4 Americans had a dog. There were more than 80 million dogs in America. Therefore, there were many animal training organizations. Animals' thought processes were different from humans. Humans were logical thinkers. Just a simple question of where to go to play would cause the human brain to go through hundreds of turns. Animals, on the other hand, had directional thinking. They could remember keywords. For example, eating, playing, or swimming. Most dogs could remember keywords like sitting, shaking hands, and eating. For humans, taking a drink was like taking it from the fridge. Pets, on the other hand, needed to familiarize themselves with the process. They had to find the fridge, open it, take out the drink, and give it to their owner. Every additional step would be more difficult for the pet. For example, if the owner barked 3 times before opening the fridge, the pet wouldn't think about why he barked 3 times, but they might not remember the steps. However, to Evely, all of Qin Zhao's pets seemed to have gained intelligence. Right now, Barisa wouldn't listen to advice at all. Her confidence was the same as Qin Zhao's. She thought that her pets were the smart ones. But can you take out 30 million? Barisa looked at the two mockingly. Even if I sell everything I have, I'll still get you 30 million US dollars. But considering your gambling behavior, I'm really doubtful if you'll keep your promise. Qin Zhao didn't think much of it. Barisa's face was red, and she looked a little embarrassed and angry. Why do you suspect me? I'm the chairman of a multi-billion-dollar company. Based on the fact that you refuse to admit that you lost $1 million, I highly doubt that you will abide by the $30 million bet. How about this? We'll both transfer the money to Evely's account. At least I trust her. Barisa felt that her pride had been hurt, but it was true that she was in the wrong to renege on the debt. All right. After Qin Zhao and Barisa transferred the money to Evely, Qin Zhao's family of 3 left happily. Barisa, you're definitely going to lose. Qin Ke is an expert in taming beasts. He has many ferocious beasts at home, and each of them is smarter and more obedient than the last. You have no chance of winning. They just look smart and obedient. Mr. Rudy has already agreed to work for my family's zoo. I'll have him help me win in 3 days. The only zoo in San Diego was their family's property. Recently, their family had been using political power to adopt China's national treasure, the giant panda. All the zoos in the world wanted to have a giant panda. Unfortunately, the Chinese government's protection of the giant panda had reached an insane level. China had adopted panda diplomacy in the past. Since 1957, they had given 24 giant pandas to other countries. In recent years, all the giant pandas that China sent overseas were on loan. Moreover, if the giant pandas overseas gave birth, they would belong to China. If the giant pandas encountered any illegal treatment abroad, the Chinese government would take them back directly. Just how popular were the giant pandas overseas? People from many countries had petitioned their governments, hoping that they would pressure the Chinese government to rent the giant pandas. In China's negotiations with other countries, the giant pandas were one of the clauses. Japan was the most panda-crazy country. 2 years ago, Xiangxiang was born in Japan, and everyone celebrated its birthday. A month before Xiangxiang met the visitors for the first time, the zoo was full, and people had to draw lots to meet Xiangxiang. 400 groups of visitors could meet Xiangxiang in a day, and each group had 5 people. This meant that 2,000 people could meet Xiangxiang in a day. However, there were 18,300 groups of applicants, which meant that only 1 out of 46 people would be able to draw lots. Rudy was the most famous animal trainer in the world, and he was also the former president of the Animal Protection Association. He was also known as the person who understood animals the best in the world. It was said that he could understand the language of animals. The reason why Baressa was able to invite Rudy was that she had promised him that she would use all her power to apply for a pair of giant pandas to come to the zoo. Of course, even though their family had a strong political background, it was still very difficult to apply for the giant pandas. First, the person in charge of the giant panda breeding center in the country would send people to the zoo for inspection. Those who did not meet the requirements would not be able to apply. Finally, they would pay a huge rental fee. It could be said that the giant pandas were the most expensive animals in the world. Of course, if they could really apply for the giant pandas, the profits would also be huge. Because in the whole of California, only the LA Zoo had a giant panda. According to research, the giant pandas in the LA Zoo earned more than $10 million in profit every year. The LA Zoo also planned to apply for another giant panda this year. Currently, there were only 2 giant pandas in the world that did not belong to China. They lived in Mexico, and were the 3rd generation of pandas born to the giant pandas gifted to Mexico in 1975. Because they were the descendants of the gifted pandas, their ownership also belonged to Mexico. Currently, all the zoos and cities in the world that did not have giant pandas wanted to apply for one. Zoos in cities that had giant pandas wanted to rent another one for breeding. Furthermore, after breeding and giving birth to the baby panda, it would still belong to China in name. Chapter 1162. Mr. Chen. Chen Zhao received a call from Andrews. Mr. Andrews, what's up? Mr. Chen, we found the professional manager you asked us to find, Andrews said. He was originally the general manager of Shiyuan Beer's American division. Wait. Chen Zhao asked. Is the Shiyuan Beer the international brand? Yes. But I'm only going to open a few $1 million brewery. I can't afford the salary of a professional manager like him. Shiyuan Beer's market value was in the billions. The general manager's annual salary was more than $1 million. The brewery Chen Zhao was going to invest in might only make $1 million. Did he have to use all his profits to hire this professional manager? Anyone with a brain wouldn't find such a high-level manager. Usually, headhunting companies would screen and rank talents around the world. Then, if a company needed a talent, they'd buy the talent's information from the headhunting company. It wouldn't be a small company and find a top talent. If Chen Zhao wanted to find a normal manager, Andrews would find him a top-notch manager. Chen Zhao really doubted whether it was safe to let Andrews manage his funds. Mr. Chen, Andrews said. He only wants $200,000 a year. Wait. Chen Zhao asked. Is there something wrong with him? Chen Zhao asked. Or something else? An annual salary of $200,000 might be a super high salary for a regular person. But for a top manager, $200,000 was a bit shameful. He was also too obsessed. In his previous job, he was the general manager of Shiyuan Beer's American division. That was a very high position. After leaving Shiyuan Beer, he could still get a job with a good salary. He was kicked out by Shiyuan Beer, Andrews said. Andrews said, he is a victim of the internal power struggle of Shiyuan Group. He is now engaged in the same industry as a declaration of war and revenge against Shiyuan Beer. He has interviewed many beer manufacturers before, but none of them are willing to accept him, because those beer manufacturers are afraid of offending Shiyuan beer. Therefore, he is now taking a step back and taking the initiative to reduce his salary to help Mr. Chen run the brewery. However, he also has a condition to join. If he can increase the value of the beer brand tenfold in the next 3 years, he will automatically get 25% of the shares. It had to be said that ambitious and capable people were dragons wherever they went. Doesn't he have a non-competition contract? He didn't accept Shiyuan Beer's non-competition compensation, Andrews said. Generally speaking, such a high-level professional manager would know a lot of the original company's trade secrets. In order to ensure that trade secrets would not be leaked, the original company would require the employee not to participate in similar businesses for many years after leaving the original company. Of course, because of this, the original company would also compensate the employee for the non-competition, usually half a year to a year of salary compensation. However, they could choose not to sign it. However, if the original company found out that the employee had leaked the company's trade secrets, they would still be punished. It didn't mean that they could leak secrets without a competition agreement. Is it worth the price? Chen Zhao asked. Shiyuan beer was originally a Swedish beer brand. At first, it was just a medium-sized brand with average sales in Europe. It only came to America 12 years ago, but it was almost impossible for Shiyuan beer to enter the beer market back then. In the first 3 years, Shiyuan beer didn't make any profits from the American market and even suffered losses. It wasn't until Mr. Denver took over as the general manager of the American branch that he started to adjust Shiyuan beer's strategy in America. In the same year, Shiyuan beer sold over 300 million cans in America and became the 4th best-selling beer in America. Before that, Shiyuan beer's sales had never exceeded the top 50. In the second year, it became the #1 best-selling beer. In the following 10 years, Shiyuan beer has always been in the top 3. Mr. Denver played a crucial role in expanding Shiyuan beer's influence, so don't doubt Mr. Denver's talent in beer. Originally, Mr. Denver would have been able to retire honorably in 5 years, but because of the power struggle within Shiyuan beer, he was kicked out without getting anything. Therefore, he hates the child he raised more than anyone else, Andrews said. I'd like to meet Mr. Denver. Is that okay? That's a must. Mr. Denver also wants to meet you, Mr. Chen. After all, Chen Zhao was the boss. He had to be a professional manager. He couldn't just not meet Andrews. I'm in San Diego right now, Chen Zhao said. I can only return to LA in 8 days. Mr. Denver hopes to do it as soon as possible. He seems to be in a hurry. If that's the case, I can only ask Mr. Denver to come to San Diego. I'll talk to him and ask for his opinion. Okay, I'll wait for your good news. That's all for now. Mr. Chen, goodbye. Goodbye. Less than 20 minutes after hanging up, Chen Zhao's phone rang again. It was an unfamiliar number, but not many people knew that it was Chen Zhao's private number. Hello, who is this? Are you Mr. Chen? I'm Denver. I applied for the brewery you're investing in. Yes, Mr. Denver. I'm Chen Zhao. Which hotel are you in San Diego? I'll drive there now. Are you coming today? If Mr. Chen can accept my job, I hope to start working as soon as possible. Okay, I'm at Buffy Hotel. When Mr. Denver arrives, you can call me. Okay, I'll see you in 4 hours. Chen Zhao had to admit that Mr. Denver was really impatient. Chen Zhao was looking forward to meeting him. Fei Lai was reading on the tatami in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. Jerlin was running around the living room like crazy. Even if she was alone, she could have a lot of fun. Chen Zhao walked to Fei Lai. Darling, what are you reading? Fei Lai flipped the pages. Chen Zhao's face darkened when he saw the book in Fei Lai's hands. The words sophisticated physiognomy were imprinted in his eyes. There was such a thing as sophisticated physiognomy. Chen Zhao would rather Fei Lai read fashion magazines than something that seemed right but wasn't. Chapter 1163. After dinner, Denver's call came. Chen Zhao picked up the call and arranged to meet Denver at the hotel restaurant. Denver was in his early 60s. His silver hair was very eye-catching. However, he was a person who cared about his appearance and dressed formally. "Hello, Mr. Chen. I'm Denver Ritter." "Hello." After the two shook hands, they found a place to sit down. "Mr. Denver, I don't understand why you're in such a hurry. The factory hasn't been built yet. 2 more days won't make a difference. Have you heard of the Denver Beer Festival?" It's the same as your name. It's just a coincidence." "I'm not related to Denver," Denver said. Denver said, "I am not from Denver." The Denver Beer Festival is one of the 3 largest beer festivals in the world. It is held in September or October every year. This year, it will be held in July. The Denver Beer Festival is also the easiest market for us to enter. The Denver Beer Festival attracts at least 2 million visitors across the United States. If the people who attend the beer festival like our beer, it will be our best start. So, we need to produce our first beer in July at the latest. Is the beer festival really that important? Almost every beer festival has a sales chart, so a lot of beer manufacturers will promote their beer at beer festivals, especially a large-scale beer festival like the Denver Beer Festival. If our beer can make an appearance at the Denver Beer Festival and get off to a good start, then the brewery's future development will be much easier. But how do we get into the sales charts at the beer festival? It won't be easy. Almost no one knows our brand. Will consumers choose our beer? I have a plan. First, we have to conquer Mara's supermarket and put our beer on the shelves there. Then, we'll reduce the number of beers on the shelves. We'll use Mara's supermarket to create public opinion and make people subconsciously think how good our beer is. But it won't be easy to put our beer on the shelves in Mara's supermarket, especially for a nameless manufacturer like us. Plus, we haven't been in operation for long. Chen Zhao was speechless. What? Mr. Chen, is my plan not good? I've been planning to put our beer on the shelves in Mara's supermarket for a long time, Chen Zhao said. It's not a problem. Mr. Chen, do you have any connections? Yes, Chen Zhao said. You don't have to worry about that. I can definitely put my brand's beer on the shelves in Mara's supermarket. Mr. Chen, I heard that Mara's supermarket is very strict with its alcohol suppliers. A few well-known beer brands have already been rejected. Some people have tried to get in, but they were all rejected. The boss of Mara's supermarket group will not reject my products. Putting aside his relationship with Fei Lai, Chen Zhao was the owner and brewer of the expensive wine. Thus, Winnip couldn't refuse the old wine. Mr. Chen, can you tell me the reason? I hope the plan will be 100% successful. Denver looked at Chen Zhao seriously. I am the owner and brewer of the most expensive wine in the world. Denver's eyes widened and he stared at Chen Zhao in shock. Mr. Chen, are you serious? Yes. Denver suddenly realized why Chen Zhao was so confident. It turned out that he had been working with Mara's supermarket for a long time. Nowadays, Mara's supermarket had a good reputation. In America, there was a saying that if you wanted to buy the best wine, go to Mara's supermarket. The wine sold there was definitely the best. Some alcohol manufacturers even said in their advertisements that their wine would be on the shelves of Mara's supermarket. This was a special honor for them. Similarly, it was a form of promotion for Mara's supermarket. The beer produced by Chen Zhao, the brewer of Daydream, was also a gimmick. Mr. Chen, if you can make use of your name, then the value of your beer's brand will increase tenfold. Never mind, Chen Zhao said. I prefer to maintain a sense of mystery. Win Nip had said that someone had once coveted the recipe of Daydream. Their methods were far beyond normal business competition. If the brewer of Daydream was exposed, trouble might come knocking. Also, if you want your beer to taste better than other brands, you can use Mirror Lake's water to brew it, Chen Zhao said. Mirror Lake is under my name right now. The water I use to brew Daydream comes from Mirror Lake. Denver's eyes brightened. Chen Zhao didn't want to expose himself. But since Chen Zhao was the brewer of Daydream, he had to be a master brewer. His advice would definitely be very insightful. Of course, I'll go check out the Mirror Lake you mentioned. Mirror Lake is my land, so other manufacturers will need my permission if they want to get water from here. Hearing this, Denver was even more confident. Mr. Chen, I'll increase the value of the beer under your name by 100 times, or even 1,000 times. Also, I'll recommend a brewer who's very good at wheat beer. He's very good and can be in charge of the beer's taste. Most beer on the market was produced by industrial production lines, but a large brewery couldn't lack a team of brewers and wine tasters. They were responsible for inspecting the products. Also, a skilled brewer had to be paid a high salary by the manufacturer. The more industrial a brewery was, the more they couldn't ignore the brewers. Did Mr. Andrews tell you about the situation in Mountain Town? He did. You don't have to worry about that, Mr. Chin. Denver wasn't a greenhorn. His management skills were far beyond Chen Zhao's imagination. Mr. Chen, according to our plan, it's best if we buy this beer brand directly instead of working with the town government, Denver said. This will maximize our profits, but if we share the brand, we'll be easily controlled by others. But the town government might not be willing to sell this brand. Chapter 1164. Mr. Chen, I think I should go back to LA, don't you want a drink? You should stay at night in San Diego. It's a nice city. Ha. Mr. Chen, you don't like this city, just like how I don't like it. Why do you think I don't like it here? We've been sitting here for 2 hours, but you haven't looked out the window even once. That doesn't mean anything. Mr. Chen, do you want to see my psychology certificate? Fine. Also, I don't drink. Chen Zhao's eyes widened. Denver had been selling beer for more than a decade, but he didn't drink. Alcohol numbs my nerves and makes me make wrong judgments. Chen Zhao seemed to see himself. When he was a doctor, he also didn't drink. However, compared to Denver's puritanical self-discipline, Chen Zhao didn't think he could do it. Fine. Be careful when you drive at night. I don't want to lose a perfect partner. Partner. That's right. Chen Zhao and Denver were partners. They weren't superiors or subordinates, nor were they employees or employers. They just happened to have the same goal. Chen Zhao didn't have the ability to hire a high-end manager like Denver. Similarly, Denver was not the kind of person who would submit to others for a pittance. Chen Zhao was doing it for benefits, while Denver was doing it for ambition. Denver waved and left. Chen Zhao walked to the bar in the restaurant. Give me a drink. Me too. Whiskey, thank you. A middle-aged man walked to the bar. He looked at Chen Zhao, picked up the drink the bartender handed him, and raised it gently. Chen Zhao picked up the glass, nodded slightly, and took a sip. Sir, do we know each other? My name is Molisman Jarovitz. Chen Zhao hadn't heard of Molisman before, but he'd heard of the famous Jarovitz family. In America, the mafia was an unavoidable topic. When Chen Zhao was in LA, he would talk about the mafia from time to time when he ate and drank with his friends. It was just like how in China, it would occasionally be mentioned that certain celebrities were cheating or that certain celebrities were taking drugs. Chen Zhao didn't dare to say that he knew Jarovitz like the back of his hand, but he wasn't a stranger. Mr. Chen, can we get to know each other? Mollisman smiled at him. Chen Zhao frowned and thought for a long time, staring at Mollisman. Mr. Chen, regarding what happened that night, you actually didn't do it perfectly. Oh, so you're here for revenge? Chen Zhao asked curiously. No, I don't care about that at all. I'm not here to threaten you or take revenge on you. I'm here to remind you that if I can find out, others can too, such as the Mexicans and Colombians. Chen Zhao didn't understand Mollisman's intentions. Was he going to use her as a weapon? Do you want to fight the Mexicans and Colombians by yourselves? Mr. Chen, we can keep it simple. Don't think too much. Things are not as complicated as you think. I just want to remind you to be careful. That's all. Thank you. As the saying went, one did not slap a smiling person. Before Mollisman showed any hostility or ill intentions, Chen Zhao could not say anything bad. By the way, you'd better go back to your family. Those mad dogs will seize any opportunity to bite. Knock knock, Fei Lai thought that Chen Zhao had returned. But when she opened the door, she realized that it wasn't Chen Zhao. It was a few people she didn't know. Fei Lai wanted to close the door immediately. But just then, a foot reached in. The person outside gave the door a hard push. The door smashed onto Fei Lai's head. Fei Lai fell to the ground. By then, the person outside had already entered the room and grabbed Fei Lai's hair. She raised her foot and kicked the person's crotch. Then, with a series of kicks, she knocked the person over. But it wasn't just one person. There were 5 or 6 of them. Fei Lai got into a boxing stance, but she was also very nervous. Her breathing became rapid. Just then, she felt her stomach hurt. Bad guy. Jerlin appeared out of nowhere and used her toys to hit the people. Jerlin's cheeks puffed up as she stared at the people angrily. Go catch that brat. Jerlin, run. Fei Lai screamed. She raised her foot and kicked the person's face. But the person clearly knew how to fight. He raised his arm and blocked Fei Lai's attack. At the same time, he swung his hand back. Fei Lai fell to the ground heavily and rolled a few times. Little bitch, I like big bellies. I'll make you scream louder later. Aw. Let go. At this moment, little Jerlin was also caught. A large hand lifted little Jerlin's arm. Jerlin kicked around, but her little arms and legs couldn't touch anyone at all. Suddenly, the gang members guarding outside the door flew in. Chen Zhao walked in with a pale face. The moment Fei Lai saw Chen Zhao, she felt relieved. Fei Lai, sorry. I'm back. Chen. Jerlin is in their hands. Chen Zhao looked at the gang member who was holding Jerlin. A black shadow flashed under his feet. In an instant, the shadow wrapped around the gang member. Little Jerlin also broke away from his hand. The dark magma formed a cushion below, and little Jerlin landed steadily on the cushion. What's that? The other gang members all looked at the dark lava on their comrade in shock. The dark lava escorted Jerlin back into Chen Zhao's arms. Chen Zhao carried Jerlin to Fei Lai. Seeing the wounds on Fei Lai's face and forehead, Chen Zhao's heart ached. Fei Lai, sorry. I didn't come back immediately. It's okay. You came in time. Fei Lai forced a smile. Chen Zhao caressed Fei Lai's face gently as if no one else was around. He noticed that Fei Lai's face was in pain. Oh no, she's having a baby. Chen Zhao glanced at the gang members in the room and then said to Fei Lai, drink this. We're going to the hospital. What about them? Stay here for now, Chen Zhao said. Chen Zhao didn't want to kill them yet. Of course, he didn't want to kill them in front of Fei Lai and Zhilin either. Zhilin was getting more mature now. She knew better than before what killing was. Fei Lai was also pregnant and shouldn't come into contact with blood. The dark magma controlled the gang members. Chen Zhao left the room with Fei Lai and Zhilin and went straight to the hospital. In the car, Chen Zhao was checking Fei Lai's injuries. Chapter 1165. Mom, don't be scared. Zhilin is with you. Zhilin touched Fei Lai's cheek gently. Fei Lai was much calmer now. She sat on the hospital bed. Sir, how did this young lady get injured? A bad guy hit her, Zhilin said. I fell myself, Fei Lai said. Fei Lai could roughly understand what the doctor was thinking. He probably thought that it was the result of domestic violence. The doctor looked at Chen Zhao, who was also very awkward. We were robbed when we were outside. Chen Zhao found an excuse. The doctor glanced at Fei Lai and nodded. Okay. Once the doctor felt that it was domestic violence, he had the right to call the police. This lady's injury isn't serious. She has slight contractions, but they've already stopped. In the future, don't make any strenuous movements and don't eat spicy food. Chen Zhao had already found these results, but he still brought Fei Lai to the hospital for a scan to make sure nothing went wrong. The doctor didn't even write a prescription. Pregnant women usually didn't take medicine if they could. Fei Lai, do you want to stay in the hospital for a few days for observation? Chen, you're too nervous. I'm fine. Fei Lai saw that Chen Zhao's expression hadn't melted since the incident. It was like a piercing cold wind. Even when he looked at her and Zhilin, he had a forced smile. When he walked out of the hospital, Chen Zhao made another call. Klaus, I'll have to trouble you again. Go to my house and bring my pets to San Diego. Also, bring my family's RV here. When he was in Los Angeles, Fei Lai and Zhilin always had their pets by their side. So, Chen Zhao could walk around without worry. But this time, Chen Zhao left his pets at home and let the inferior demons take care of them. He was just downstairs, but Fei Lai and Zhilin didn't protect him. After returning to the hotel, Chen Zhao booked a bigger suite. Fei Lai and Zhilin definitely didn't want to return to the previous room. This was a super luxurious suite. It was more than 200 square meters and had all sorts of luxurious decorations. Chen Zhao coaxed Fei Lai and Zhilin to sleep and then waited. At around 11:00 at night, Klaus brought his pets over. Chen Zhao had the pets look after Fei Lai and Zhilin before leaving the room with Klaus. President, did something happen again? Klaus could clearly feel Chen Zhao's expression. It was extremely terrifying. Last time, Chen Zhao still had a smile on his face. But today, he didn't smile at all. Fei Lai and Zhilin were attacked, Chen Zhao said coldly. Heart trembling, Klaus followed Chen Zhao into the elevator. The sky was falling. The sky was really going to collapse. Ding! After descending a few floors, the elevator stopped. Chen Zhao walked out of the elevator and returned to his original suite. Klaus followed him in and saw that the living room was a little messy. At the same time, he saw a few people being bound by some mysterious substance. These people were obviously frightened. Klaus was very good at reading people's minds. He was willing to work for Chen Zhao. But right now, Chen Zhao didn't want others to work for him. Instead, he wanted to vent the anger in his heart. Chen Zhao summoned the Dark Matrix. The Matrix of Darkness brought a gang member before Chen Zhao. It was this hand that touched my daughter just now, right? Yen hashtag, what's he saying? He's speaking Spanish, but I'm not very familiar with it. He's probably begging you for mercy, Klaus said. Eat this hand first, Chen Zhao said to the dark matrix. The dark matrix grabbed the person's arm and started chewing. It didn't eat it in one bite. Instead, it chewed off the flesh piece by piece. The person wanted to scream, but his mouth was covered by the dark lava. President, do you want me to call them over? No, I don't want others to interfere this time. Some things have to be handled by myself. It wasn't that Klaus hadn't seen Chen Zhao's cruel side before. However, the sound of the dark matrix chewing was really uncomfortable. President, I'll bring 2 people into the room to interrogate in case they collude. Okay, go, but don't kill them. Got it. Klaus picked 2 people and brought them into the room. Close the door. I know you got goosebumps when you heard the dark matrix chewing. Chen Zhao looked at the remaining people. They'd already pissed their pants. Don't worry, I won't kill anyone. I swear to God, I won't kill you, Chen Zhao said. But if anyone refuses my questions, I'll let you experience hell. They really believed Chen Zhao. Of course, Chen Zhao kept his promise, which was rare. This time, Chen Zhao really didn't plan on killing them. When Klaus came out of the room, he realized that they were all still alive. This surprised him greatly. He had already mentally prepared himself to face a bloody scene inside. But they were all unharmed. Klaus looked at Chen Zhao in confusion. The guild leader couldn't have changed, right? President, what should we do with them? Cut off their hands and feet and send them back to HQ. Then bury them and feed them every day. Klaus shuddered, and these people were so frightened that their faces were drained of blood. Clearly, Chen Zhao was really angry this time. President, they were sent by the Mexican gang and the Colombian gang. Go and rent a big truck, Chen Zhao said. Klaus gulped. A big truck. The Mexican and Colombian gangs had a lot of people. There were hundreds of them. Okay, I'll go now. Klaus walked out of the room and took out his phone. Mr. West, the sky is falling. What's wrong? Miss Feilai and little Jerlin were attacked by a local gang in San Diego. Feilai seems to be injured. Hearing Klaus' words, West couldn't help but be shocked. What about Feilai's baby? It should be fine. Otherwise, the president wouldn't be so calm, Klaus said. But the president's calmness is a little scary. I feel a little creeped out. The president is a little scared tonight. Where is he now? He probably went to take revenge on the Mexican and Colombian gangs. You're not with him. The president told me to rent a big truck. Rent a big truck. For what? Disguise. Disguise what? The president plans to cut off the hands and feet of all the Mexican and Colombian gangs and plant them in our HQ, West shuddered. Was this a joke? What would happen if a few hundred people were planted in the HQ? No, he didn't mind if Chen Zhao wanted to kill all the gangs. Plus, he couldn't stop Chen Zhao now. He didn't dare to. Chapter 1166. Juan's bar was a very Latin-styled bar. Most of the people here were Colombian gang members. On the surface, it looked like a bar, but it was actually a drug factory. The manager here was called Juan. He was also the second in command of the Colombian gang. Juan looked down at the frenzied music and the dancing of the demons. Waiters in revealing clothes weaved through the crowd with trays. In some corners, men and women were having sex. Everyone here was armed. Even the waiters, who were only wearing bras and shorts, had guns on their waistbands. Just then, Juan saw a strange figure come out of the dance hall on the first floor. That person was wearing a Spider-Man mask and was looking around. "Who's that?" Juan called his subordinate over and pointed at the Spider-Man. "I don't think he's one of us." "Damn, what's wrong with the people outside? How could they let a stranger in?" "Boss, I'll go call the people outside in." "Not yet. Bring me that person. I want to know how he got in." A while later, the subordinate brought the person wearing the Spider-Man mask to a room on the second floor. "Take off the mask," Juan said. The subordinate reached out to pull the mask, but Spider-Man raised his hand. With a scream, he crushed Juan's subordinate's arm. Juan immediately pointed his gun at Spider-Man. "Who are you?" The uninvited person wearing the Spider-Man mask was, of course, Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao took a step forward and kicked Juan's chest. With a scream, Juan was smashed into the floor-to-ceiling window behind him. With a clang, Juan fell onto the dance floor on the first floor. Everyone was stunned. Then, they looked up at Chen Zhao, who was by the window on the second floor. Instantly, everyone in the bar raised their guns and pointed at Chen Zhao. Thud, thud. Screams rang out. Just when everyone thought that Chen Zhao had been shot full of holes, the lights in the bar suddenly went out. Everyone was plunged into darkness, and screams of agony rang out at this moment. Red stripes appeared in the darkness. They ran through the entire bar and covered all the walls, floor, and ceiling. Right now, a large truck was parked outside the bar. Klaus sat in the driver's seat, listening to music with his headset. However, even with the headset, it still couldn't completely block out the screams coming from inside. The members of Lightning Squad were there as well. They were also waiting for their turn. This process lasted for a few minutes before the screams came to an abrupt end. At this moment, Klaus took off his headset. "All right, it's our turn." When the members of the Lightning Squad entered the bar, they saw countless severed limbs on the floor. There were also those who had their limbs cut off lying on the ground, wailing, crying, or begging for help. The Lightning Squad began to clean up the scene. They dragged the men out of the bar and threw them into the truck. Dozens of people were all dragged into the truck. Then, Klaus's phone rang. "Klaus, I'll go to the next bar first. You guys finish up at Juan's bar and come over here to clean up." "Yes, guild leader." After Klaus hung up the phone, he carried 2 human sticks and walked out of the bar. "Have you checked everything? We have to hurry to the next location." This time, Chen Zhao went to a farm in the suburbs. It was called a farm, but it wasn't crops. Instead, it was corn. Unlike the noise and chaos at Juan's bar, this farm was heavily guarded. There were also some hidden guards outside, so Chen Zhao didn't plan on hiding. He directly killed the people in the hidden guards. However, Chen Zhao seemed to be a bit careless. The hidden guards still opened fire, which also attracted the attention of the farm. "What's happening outside? Is there an intruder?" The person in charge of the farm was the second in command of the Mexican gang, Quick. Suddenly, there was a scream from outside. It's Dole's voice. "There's an intruder." Then, the gunshots outside suddenly became more intense. Quick and a few of his subordinates were all gathered in the hall. They saw a subordinate shooting at a corner in front of them. But the next moment, the subordinate was dragged into the corner amidst the screams. It was a very uncomfortable feeling. If it was an enemy that they could see, they wouldn't panic. But they still couldn't see the enemy's true face. Moreover, the deaths of their subordinates were all very strange. This made Quick and the others' hair stand on end. It was as if the intruders weren't humans, but something else. Just then, the lights in the hall went out. The scene in Juan's bar replayed. Everyone let out hysterical screams. Then, the gunshots and screams stopped. Quick couldn't see the figure clearly. However, after more than 10 minutes of darkness, a figure came in and dragged Quick out. At first, Quick thought that it was an ambulance. But soon, he realized that something was wrong. Because he was thrown into the back of a truck. In the truck, there were already dozens of people like him who had their limbs cut off. He also knew some of them. They were from the Columbia gang, and one of them seemed to be Juan. In one night, Chen Zhao had attacked 3 Columbia drug factories and 2 Mexican factories. Nearly 150 people were stuffed into the truck. Bolton, something big happened. Bolton was woken up again. What happened? Juan's bar, come quickly. When Bolton arrived at the door of Juan's bar, he could already smell the thick stench of blood. By now, the outside was already sealed off. But when Bolton entered the bar, he didn't see a single body. They were all severed arms and legs. Where are they? Bolton asked Dawes. No one. We can't find a single body. Only severed arms and legs are left. Dawes' expression was extremely serious. How many people are here? Counting from the number of severed arms and legs, there are 33 people in total. Are there any clues? There is a surveillance camera in the ballroom. A person wearing a Spider-Man mask appeared, and then that person was taken to the 2nd floor. Then the power of the bar was pulled, and the surveillance camera lost its effect. The only thing that couldn't be found at the scene was the limbs of the Spider-Man, so this matter is likely related to that Spider-Man. Spider-Man wouldn't do something so cruel, Bolton said. It must be a gang killing. Chapter 1167. That is to say, more than 100 people had their limbs cut off. And their bodies were taken away. What kind of person would do this? Could it be a cult? I don't know. We don't have any clues except for the 2 surveillance cameras. Who cares? It has nothing to do with us anyway. These people are all D*MN bastards. Even if there is a trial, it should be handed over to the court. This kind of lynching is tantamount to breaking the law. But this kind of thing is really creepy. Who did it? I'm really curious. In the past, Bolton always had all kinds of questions at crime scenes and appeared very active. This was the first time he had examined a crime scene so quietly. He had been a police officer for 10 years, but he had never seen such a terrible crime scene. Suddenly, Bolton found a broken beam at the crime scene. The beam seemed to have been cut by some sharp weapon. Bolton touched the cut of the beam. The cut was as smooth as glass. It was like a knife cutting through tofu. Sir, several factories of the Colombians and Mexicans were attacked last night. Oh, how many people died? Mollisman asked disapprovingly. He was not surprised by the result. If they were not attacked, then Mollisman would be surprised. Not a single person died. What? Mollisman was stunned. How could not a single person die? Did he overestimate that person's strength? To be precise, not a single body was found. I don't understand what's the difference. Mollisman looked at the butler, puzzled. There was no living person at the scene. All the places where the attack happened, a large number of limbs were cut off, but there was no one. The injured seemed to have been moved away. All the places that were attacked are the same. Yes, more than 100 people are missing. Tisk, tisk. A few of the crime scenes also found the wheel marks of a large truck, as well as a lot of blood. That person is really cruel. More than 100 people. Mollisman was amazed. So what's the reaction of Gisval and Basako? Gisval is now looking for the real murderer all over the city, and Basako has gathered everyone. Mollisman smiled and said, "Fortunately. At least we're not enemies." "Right, inform Giswold that he's tonight's target." "Master, I don't think we need to get involved. Don't you think that if we can sell that person a favor, it won't be bad for us?" "But I don't understand. Isn't informing Giswold the same as making him your enemy? Why do you think Giswold and Basako are still alive?" "I don't understand. Because they haven't gathered all their manpower yet. That man's revenge last night was just an appetizer. What he wants is not only to take revenge on Giswold and Basako, but also on the Mexican and Colombian gangs. He wants to kill all of them. If he only takes revenge on their boss, it won't be long before a new boss is born. At that time, the new boss will inevitably think that the previous boss is taking revenge on him in order to gain a foothold. So, that man wants to get rid of them all. But aren't you afraid that Giswold and Basako will be on guard? Their armed forces are not weak, and they also have heavy firepower. This is very troublesome. That man isn't afraid." Mollisman's face was filled with a gentle smile. What a happy day. The two mad dogs can finally disappear from my sight forever. Phalai, are you going out today? After one night, the scars on Phalai's face had already disappeared. However, Chen Zhao was still worried. Now, whenever Phalai or Jerlin left the room, Chen Zhao would have a pet follow them. Even Phalai felt that Chen Zhao was too protective. "Chen, it's the opening ceremony of the university games this afternoon, right? Aren't you busy?" "I've already asked Robert to manage it," Chen Zhao said, bored. "The opening ceremony isn't fun at all. How about you and Jerlin go too?" "No. Don't you know that I can't sit for too long?" Phalai clearly didn't want to go, but her excuse was very dignified. That's right, the opening ceremony was really boring. The participating teams from the 10 schools would circle around the stadium and then introduce themselves one by one. Then there would be some cheerleading performances. "Then I'll stay with you." "No, go do what you need to do." "But I want to stay by your side," Chen Zhao asked. "Are you going shopping?" Chen Zhao was really nervous now. He felt that he would be in a hell once he left the room. How could he let Phalai and Jerlin go out alone? "Chen, this is a civilized society. Last night, you and Jerlin were almost killed. But didn't you take revenge last night?" Phalai didn't believe that Chen Zhao would stay in the room peacefully. When Chen Zhao was beside her yesterday, he'd been suppressing his anger. Moreover, the police sirens outside had obviously increased a lot today. Phalai didn't know what Chen Zhao had done last night, but it definitely wasn't something pleasant. "I might have to go out again tonight. Didn't you clean it last night?" "Not yet," Chen Zhao said. "They were a bit scattered last night. I scared them first and waited for them to gather." "How did you deal with them?" "You definitely don't want to know," Chen Zhao said. "Fine. Be careful tonight." However, Chen Zhao soon learned from Robert's call that the opening ceremony had already ended. Next, Chen Zhao really had to go out. After all, as the leader of UCLA, Chen Zhao couldn't just ignore everything. "Phalai, did you set my number as an emergency number?" "It's been set up." Phalai rolled her eyes. "Go. Also, take all the heavy weapons in the room. I'm even more worried about leaving them in the room. It'll be troublesome if Jerlin touches them." Phalai was really speechless. Chen Zhao had actually placed all sorts of weapons under the bed, from conventional to unconventional. Phalai also knew that a few people had moved into the room next door. Phalai had seen Klaus and the others before. She didn't have to guess to know that Chen Zhao had called them. Phalai didn't even have the power to open the door. This was because King Kong would always run over to open the door. Feilai was both touched and helpless by Qin Zhao's excessive protection. Chapter 1168. Bisako, Molisman said that the person will attack us again today. This time, he'll target the two of us. Damn, that Asian. We only sent him once. His women and children are fine, but he killed so many of our people. Is he still not going to stop? To be honest, when they received the news this morning, Bisako and Gazeville were still shocked. They wouldn't be surprised at all if one of their factories was destroyed. After all, the person had already destroyed the port. The person's power was unquestionable. But they didn't expect the person to destroy 5 of their factories in a row. After all, if any place was attacked, they could call for help. But they didn't. It was like they were suddenly attacked and the battle ended in a short time. Everything was so fleeting. Everyone had disappeared, leaving behind only broken limbs. The scene was disgusting. Many limbs were left, but there was no one. Not a single person. This made them feel a deep chill. The person's actions were completely beyond their understanding. To do this, the person would probably have to use more troops. Then, they would cut off their limbs on the spot. This couldn't be done in a short time. This was also what they were most afraid of. Now, they already regretted their rash actions. When they sent people to harass Qin Zhao, their goal was actually the same as before. They wanted to prove their ability in San Diego. But the person wasn't scared by them. Instead, he took revenge with thunderous methods. Moreover, the person didn't stop there. The person wanted to kill them all. This gave them a bad feeling. The person was like a mad dog. He wouldn't stop until he was dead. We can't just sit here and wait for death. We have to work together, Bisako said. Bossack said, your people and my people are united. Unless they use the army, they can't do anything to us. Only by blocking their attack once will they realize that we are standing at the same height, and only then will they be able to negotiate with us. Gazeville thought about it and nodded heavily. Okay, you're right. It's 3:25 in the afternoon now. The live broadcast is showing the women's 800-meter freestyle competition at the University Games. The famous swimmer Evely is currently in 3rd place. She's in the lead and has left the second swimmer behind by at least 350 m. According to the live broadcast, Evely has broken the 50 m, 100 m, and 200-meter world records. Of course, since this is an intercontinental competition, the results can't be recorded in the world swimming rankings. However, no one doubts the authenticity of the results. My God, Evely shouldn't be here. God, you shouldn't have let Evely participate in this competition. It's an insult to the other girls. In front of the camera, a sports reporter excited platitudes. He was obviously a fanatical fan of Evely. Everything he said was praising her in different ways. However, this was common in the media because Evely had too many fans. Evely has already swum past 600 meters. She's starting to sprint. Usually, the 800-meter freestyle sprint starts after 700 meters, but Evely started at 600 meters. She's too fast. Those poor girls are only halfway there. Evely was getting closer and closer to the finish line. Everyone started cheering for Evely. Even though they weren't from UCLA, they still joined the cheers for Evely. Because they were likely to see a brand new world record, a result that would shock everyone. Evely had already created all kinds of world records before, but this would definitely be the most eye-catching. Finally, Evely touched the finish line. After hitting the wall, Evely floated to the surface and looked at the electronic score. Everyone turned their heads to look at the electronic scoring device, waiting for the result. Finally, the electronic scoring machine's results came out. Everyone was in an uproar. 6 minutes, 53 seconds. A new world record. This was no longer news to Evely. However, the other name in the record was more suitable for Evely's identity. She was the first human to swim past 7 minutes. No one paid attention to the second and third place. There weren't many reporters at the scene. There was only a live TV station and a few newspapers. They all wanted to squeeze in and interview Evely, who hadn't finished her race yet. Luckily, the security stopped them. Everyone was cheering for Evely. Evely smiled in satisfaction when she saw the result. Unfortunately, this result wouldn't be recorded in the world record. Evely's plan was to get this result in the next international competition. Only then could she truly set a new world record. The second place finally swam to the finish line. When she looked at Evely, her eyes were filled with envy and jealousy. However, she still pretended to congratulate Evely. Every girl wanted to be the center of attention. But it was extremely difficult. Evely was undoubtedly the center of attention in the swimming pool. Then, the judge announced the final result. After reading Evely's result, he even gave the audience 30 seconds to applaud her. As for the second place, there was only sparse applause. The difference between her and Evely was too huge. She was almost 2 minutes behind. This kind of gap made it hard for people to imagine that they were competing in the same kind of competition. "Miss Evely, look over here. Can you accept an interview from our TV station?" Since it was the only live TV station, they had the right to interview any contestant. The contestants couldn't refuse, including Evely. Evely still accepted the reporter's question. "Miss Evely, you're doing very well, right?" "Yes, very well." Evely nodded. "Then, Miss Evely, you're now the undisputed king of the women's 800-meter freestyle. Do you plan to enter other events?" "Yes. After this race, I'll participate in the 100m and 200-meter freestyle races. It'll be my first attempt at other events. I wish you good results in other events too, Ms. Evely. Now, do you have anything to say to the audience? Or to anyone?" Chapter 1169. Evely was only participating in an intercontinental competition. However, the attention she attracted was extraordinary. Many national and international competition organizers even regretted not inviting Evely. Otherwise, if Evely had achieved such a result in their competition would receive a lot of attention. It was such a waste to achieve such a result in a small intercontinental competition. However, Evely's words made Zabby, the coach of the swimming team, a target for everyone. He happened to be there too. He'd been hoping that Evely's results would drop due to her lack of training. That way, he would have a reason to attack Chen Zhao and Evely. But who would have thought that Evely would set another world record? It was such an unbelievable world record too. She was the first person in the world to swim under 7 minutes. This was an unparalleled honor. Evely's words would probably spread all over the world within 24 hours. Everyone would know that an idiot had trained Evely in a stupid way and almost lost the world record. In fact, Zabby had already been suspended by the school before 24 hours had passed. Evely was only complaining, but the school had to take action and express their stance. After all, Evely's influence was too great. Even UCLA could not afford to be attacked by the whole world. Taryn watched the TV program and Evely's glory. He was a bit jealous and regretful. He was an athlete in a track club now. His results were not bad. Last year, he was already in the top 10 long-distance runners in the United States. However, he was only a bit famous. Compared to Evely, the difference was too great. Who was Evely? She was a girl blessed by God, a girl blessed by Poseidon. Terran had once had this chance too. If only he hadn't been stingy with the $100,000. Perhaps he would have been even more famous than Evely now. He asked Evely and learned that Chen Zhao's current price was $10 million for 10 days. Terran wouldn't be able to earn that much even if he retired. There was also a monster-like existence in track and field. Rufford. Fortunately, Rufford was only a sprinter. Terran was a long-distance runner. Rufford was also the holder of the world record. After a day of competition, Los Angeles won 7 or 8 championships. It could be said that they had gained quite a lot. When he returned to the hotel, someone suddenly bumped into Chen Zhao. When he turned around, the person had already walked away quickly. A piece of paper appeared in Chen Zhao's pocket. It was an address. Also, there was another sentence, saying that the Mexican gang and the Colombian gang were all here. Chen Zhao immediately understood who had sent the note. "Mr. Chen, aren't you going back to your room?" Robert followed beside him. He saw the man bump Chen Zhao, and then a piece of paper appeared in Chen Zhao's hand. He didn't dare to say anything. He just stood beside Chen Zhao silently. "Okay, let's go back upstairs." Chen Zhao returned to his room and accompanied Fei Lai to sleep. Then he knocked on the door next door. Klaus opened the door. "President, what's the matter? Did anyone suspicious appear on this floor today?" "No," Klaus replied. "They've installed surveillance cameras on this floor, the elevators, and the stairwell. They were responsible for protecting Fei Lai and Zherlin when Chen Zhao wasn't around. They didn't dare to be careless. If the two of them got hurt because of their negligence, Chen Zhao would definitely skin them alive." "Oh, did you send those people home yesterday?" "It has been sent back." Klaus nodded. If they weren't sent back, they would probably all die in one night. The members of the Lightning team also came out from the 2 rooms on the left and right. "Okay, one more night and you'll be free tomorrow." "President, we're not tired." "Okay, go get the car." "I'll go first." San Diego used to be an industrial city. It used to produce a lot of steel, and it was one of the steel suppliers for Detroit's automobile factories. However, with the bankruptcy of Detroit, San Diego was also greatly affected, and a large number of steel factories were closed. Many years had passed, but the factories were still abandoned. America was a strange country. Their GDP was the highest in the world, but some of their execution abilities were very suspicious. For example, if those factories were demolished and sold, they could earn hundreds of millions of dollars. However, because the government didn't have enough funds, the projects couldn't be carried out. They could clearly just get a loan from the bank and get the initial funds, but it was delayed until now due to various reasons. The factories became less and less valuable because of this. They even became nests of criminals, constantly breeding evil. At the same time, the demolition cost increased. This was also why the bank wasn't willing to lend to the city government. This industrial area was completely deserted, but there were many people hiding in the largest steel factory here. "Bisako, don't be so nervous. We've already made a comprehensive plan. Even if they send an army, we can make them return in failure." "I hope so." Bisako grabbed a bottle of wine and poured it into his mouth. Gazeville glanced at Bisako. He was also very frustrated. After all, he didn't know how strong the enemy was. "If I knew it would turn out like this," Gazeville said, "I should have acted like nothing happened. What's the point of saying this now?" Bisako drank another mouthful of wine. Suddenly, a loud noise came from afar. Bisako and Gazeville immediately stood up and looked at the rising fireball in the distance. "That's the landmine we bought at the entrance. They're here." "Don't worry, let me ask." Gazeville picked up the walkie-talkie. Dora, is it an enemy attack? Boss, I don't see any intruders. Are you dozing off? Boss, I don't dare to doze off. There's really no one. The landmine at the intersection exploded for no reason. Could it be that your landmine is broken? Damn Russians, Gazeville said angrily. They always sell me these old weapons. The same thing happened last time. Basako looked out the window. The moon was quickly disappearing and darkness enveloped the entire industrial area. Even the lights of the city in the distance had disappeared. This abnormal sign made people feel uneasy. Chapter 1170. Suddenly, the lights in the factory went out. From the first scream, despair started to spread. Basako and Gazeville were in the office on the second floor. Through the window, they could see the inside of the factory. In the darkness, there were red lines spreading, and there was the sound of gunfire. Bang bang bang, open the door. Boss, help, a man was banging on the office door. Basako opened the door and was about to pull his men in. However, the subordinate seemed to be grabbed by something from the back. Then, he flew out and fell down the fence. What's going on? What the hell is going on? Devil, it's a devil. Our enemy isn't humans, it's a devil. Basako was holding the cross. He felt the heat from the cross and panic was written all over his face. The red patterns started to spread from every corner. Gazeville quickly closed the door. But it didn't stop the red patterns from spreading. The red patterns seeped in from the bottom of the door. Basako and Gazeville fired at the patterns on the ground. But the bullets rebounded and hit Gazeville's thigh. Basako was so frightened that he smashed the glass window and fell down the stairs. Basako didn't know where he was going. He found a trash can and crawled into it. He held the cross and hid in the trash can. The gunshots and screams didn't stop. It lasted for a long time. Almighty God, please protect your devout servant and dispel this evil power. Bolton, are you up? Damn it, Dawes. You're calling so early, it's definitely nothing good. You're right, the industrial area in the northern suburbs. That should be the Mexicans' territory, right? Yeah. What happened? You'll know when you get here. Bolton already had a bad feeling in his heart. As expected, when he arrived at the scene, he saw countless broken limbs. One of the officers seemed to be seeing this for the first time as he vomited on the side. Looking at the bloody scene, Bolton's face turned heavier. Even though they were all criminals, no one could remain calm in such a scene. Bolton came out for a breath of fresh air. The smell inside was unbearable. How many people were killed? It's still the same as yesterday. There's no one dead. Counting from the number of limbs, there's a total of 325 people, and all of them are Mexicans and Colombians. Bolton kicked the trash can beside him. Damn it. Suddenly, a howl came from the trash can. The surrounding policemen were also frightened. They all took out their guns and pointed at the trash can. Bolton gestured, carefully stepped forward, and opened the trash can. Basako. It's me, Mr. Policeman, arrest me. I confess to all the charges, arrest me quickly. At this moment, Basako was shouting incoherently. Everyone was bewildered. Bolton asked, what happened last night? Did you see it? Demons. Demons. We're being attacked by demons. Blood is spreading, bastard, you'd better behave yourself. Hurry up and tell me what happened. I want to enter the most secure prison. If you can send me in, I will tell you what happened. Burton and Dawes exchanged glances. They knew very well how deranged this man was. Just what had happened to him to actually scare him to this extent. Guys, you can do it. Clapping his hands, Chen Zhao watched the semi-final match between the University of Los Angeles and University of San Diego. Attack, attack! Robert shouted from the side. Pierre, pass the ball. Don't pass the ball. Pierre's performance was extraordinary, as if he didn't care about his life. It was just like the past few days of training, all kinds of crazy fighting styles. He had no choice but to go all out. Because Chen Zhao was right there. He felt that if he didn't try his best, or if he lost the match, he would lose. Chen Zhao would probably talk to him afterwards. 3-pointer. Good job. Chen Zhao clenched his fist. UCLA was already 15 points ahead. Chen Zhao had never been an orthodox basketball fan. But in this kind of atmosphere, as the leader of the UCLA team, of course he hoped his school's team could win. We'll cheer for every attack, we'll curse for every goal conceded. He was no different from an ordinary member of the audience. Until the end of the match, UCLA maintained a 15-point lead. Kids, good job. Chen Zhao hugged each player and encouraged them. Pierre's entire body tensed up when he hugged Chen Zhao. When they returned to the bus, the players were still in the joy of victory. Mr. Chen, should we ask them to quiet down? No need. They won an important match. Let them be happy. Chen Zhao didn't ask them to quiet down either. Just then, the TV hanging at the front of the bus broadcasted a news report. According to the information our station received, an extremely brutal murder took place in the industrial area of the northern suburbs last night. According to reliable sources, a total of 324 people from 2 gangs had their hands and feet chopped off, but there were no corpses left at the scene. Only one survivor was found. When he heard that there were survivors, Chen Zhao frowned. Never mind, it was just one survivor. The survivor is a male. It is said that this person is the famous Mexican gang boss Basaco. However, it is said that when Basaco was taken away by the police, he was already a bit deranged. He asked the police to lock him up in the most secure prison and confess to all the crimes he committed in the past. Chen Zhao's expression suddenly turned cold. It would be fine if it was just a small fry. But the person he'd missed was the boss of the Mexican gang. He couldn't take it anymore. Shut up, Chen Zhao roared. Stop making so much noise. What are you doing? Robert stood up as well. Quiet down, all of you. Do you think you've already won the championship just by winning one match? Is it worth it to be so happy? The bus instantly fell silent. Robert glanced at the news on TV. He vaguely guessed that the case in the news might be related to Chen Zhao. In the first half of the news, Chen Zhao's expression was normal. But when he heard that there was a survivor, his expression clearly changed. Then, Chen Zhao kept his eyes closed. Only Robert, who was sitting beside him, could feel that Chen Zhao was giving off a very uncomfortable feeling. Just then, Chen Zhao's phone rang. President, something happened. Klaus called. What happened? When I was driving the truck back to LA, I was stopped by the police. I abandoned the truck on the highway and escaped. Those people, Chen Zhao's expression darkened. Those people had all been touched by Chen Zhao's perfect medicine. They wouldn't die immediately. If they were found by the police, wouldn't his efforts be for nothing? I set the truck on fire before I left, Klaus said. Oh, that's more like it. But you rented the truck, right? Are you sure the police won't find you? You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.